Greetings, Loremasters. Tonight our chronicle covers the ash-swept island of Solstheim, a place where the air tastes of sulphur and the ground remembers the tread of ancient giants. Picture yourself standing on the docks of Raven Rock right now. The skies are bruised purple, choked by the relentless plumes of red mountains smoking on the southern horizon. The wind isn't just cold, it carries a dry, scratching grit that settles into the seams of your armour and the lines of your face. It is a hostile, alien landscape, far removed from the pine forests of Skyrim, demanding a resolve that goes beyond simple bravery. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Solstheim without a heavy supply of netch jelly and a really good therapist to deal with the inevitable tentacles. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Go ahead and drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love imagining where in the world you all are drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The journey begins not with a weapon drawn, but with a book opened. To understand the absolute necessity of confronting the First Dragonborn, one must first understand the insidious nature of his return. You don't just stumble upon Miraak, he invades your life. You might remember the first time you stepped off the boat, feeling that strange rhythmic chanting vibrating in the back of your skull. It's a magnetic pull, dragging the inhabitants of the island toward the Allmaker stones, forcing them to labour in their sleep on grotesque shrines. This isn't just a political conquest, it is a spiritual violation. And at the centre of this web sits Miraak, a figure of ancient arrogance who views your existence as the last Dragonborn not as a threat, but as an insult. To confront him, you must walk the path he walked, which leads inevitably to the summit of Apocrypha. This is the realm of Hermaeus Mora, the Daedric prince of knowledge and fate, and honestly, it makes the Deadlands look like a pleasant holiday resort. You open the black book Waking Dreams and the world of Solstheim dissolves. The familiar grey ash is replaced by a sky of churning, sickly green, filled with floating debris and pages torn from infinite unwritten histories. The liquid here isn't water, it's a thick necrotic ink that bubbles with the waste of forbidden secrets. Navigating Apocrypha is a sensory nightmare. The architecture is composed of stacks of books that spiral into the void, shifting and realigning as you pass. It's a library designed by a madman. Bridges unroll like parchment, and tunnels twist like the intestines of some great beast. As the Dragonborn trudges through chapter after chapter of Waking Dreams, the silence is broken only by the wet slithering of seekers. These guardians of the library float silently, their bodies robed and their faces an unfathomable mass of tentacles, firing orbs of knowledge that damage your very psyche. It's enough to make anyone wish they just stuck to reading the lusty Argonian maid instead of delving into eldritch horror. But the ascent continues. You solve the puzzles of the shifting books, placing the correct tomes on pedestals to open the way forward. It's a test of intellect as much as strength, a filtering process to ensure only the worthy reach the summit. And finally you emerge into the open air of the realm's highest peak. Here, the green sky swirls in a vortex, and a massive platform of stone and bound leather awaits. This is where the game plays its trump card. A dragon descends, Saratar. But you do not kill this beast. Using the full power of the bend will shout, a power you have painstakingly acquired, or you force the dragon's mind to bend to your own. This is a pivotal moment, a realization of dominance that Miraak himself mastered eras ago. You climb onto the serpentine neck of the dragon, the scales rough against your gloves, and fly toward the central spire where the antagonist waits. It is a moment of pure cinematic grandeur, soaring through the toxic clouds of oblivion, knowing that the confrontation to end all confrontations is seconds away. Miraak stands at the centre of the summit, not masked and draped in robes that seem to ripple with the same ink that floods the realm. His voice is calm, dripping with a condescension that has aged like fine wine over thousands of years. He acknowledges you finally. If you have already defeated Alduin in the main questline, Miraak offers a rare, obscure nod to your achievement, noting that he could have slain the World Eater himself, but chose a different path. It's a fascinating insight into his ego. He genuinely believes slaying the apocalypse was beneath him. He sees you as a pretender, a child playing with shouts you barely understand. The battle that ensues is chaotic and desperate. Miraak is not a standard bandit chief who runs at you with a steel axe. He is Dragonborn. He uses the same Thuum you do. He breathes fire, he slows time, he unleashes the cyclone shout to hurl you off your feet. The clash of steel and magic echoes across the infinite library. But the true frustration, the mechanic that likely made you throw your controller at least once, is his sustain. Every time you whittle his health down, bringing him to his knees, he shouts, "Zilosti du," and instantly absorbs the soul of a nearby dragon to fully heal himself. It is a core in-game fact that traumatizes many first-time players. Miraak is the ultimate kill stealer. Throughout your time on Solstheim, before this fight, he would randomly appear in spectral form to steal the dragon souls you earned after slaying dragons in the wild. He would taunt you, thanking you for the power boost. Now, in this final arena, he does it to survive. He consumes Saratar and the other dragons, Kruzikrel and Relonikiv, treating his own loyal servants as nothing more than health potions. It's a brutal display of his philosophy. Power is the only truth, and everything else is fuel. As the fight drags on, the ground slick with ink and blood, the attrition begins to wear on him. He runs out of dragons. He runs out of tricks. The last Dragonborn stands firm, battered but unyielding, proving that the will to dominate is matched by the will to endure. When Miraak's health drops to 0 for the final time, he attempts to retreat, to hide in the pool of ink at the centre of the platform. He calls out to his master, Hermaeus Mora, assuming the prince will save his champion. But Daedric princes are not known for their loyalty. In a sequence that is as shocking as it is inevitable, a massive tentacle bursts from the ink, impaling the first Dragonborn, then another. Hermaeus Mora's slow, monotone voice fills the air, declaring that Miraak has outlived his usefulness. The Prince of Fate does not share power, he hoards it. Miraak, who sought to escape Apocrypha and return to Solstheim as a god, is instead unmade by the very entity he served. His skeleton is stripped of flesh before your eyes, a grim reminder that in the dealings with Oblivion the house always wins. With Miraak dead, the immediate threat to Solstheim is lifted. The sleepwalkers will wake up, the stones will be cleansed, but as you stand there, absorbing Miraak's soul, reclaiming all the souls he stole from you, plus his own massive reservoir, a heavy silence falls. You loot his body, taking his unique mask, which possesses a tentacled aesthetic that matches the realm, and his sword, which extends into a whip of green energy with every swing. You also claim his staff, a tool capable of spraying the ground with writhing tentacles to poison your foes. The loot is powerful, certainly, but the context is chilling. This ending has sparked one of the most enduring debates in the fan community. Did the last Dragonborn actually win, or did they simply replace Miraak? The theory posits that Hermaeus Mora manipulated the entire conflict to swap out a rebellious, worn-out tool for a newer, stronger one. By defeating Miraak, you have proven yourself the superior Dragonborn, and thus the superior servant. You leave Apocrypha, yes, but the Black Books remain in your possession. You wield Mora's powers. You are in many ways tethered to him now. Some fans argue that the last Dragonborn's ultimate fate is to be trapped in Apocrypha just as Miraak was, wandering the stacks of infinite knowledge until they too are discarded. It's a dark thought to chew on as you watch the green sky swirl above you one last time. The summit of Apocrypha is quiet now. The dragons are gone, their bones sinking into the murky depths. The platform is empty save for the victor. You open the Black Book again, reading the passage that transports you back to the mundane reality of Solstheim. The air of the island hits you, sulphur and ash, but it feels cleaner than the stagnant atmosphere of the library. You have done what was necessary. You have confronted the past and erased it. The first Dragonborn is dead. Long live the last Dragonborn. But as you step away from the book, shaking off the lingering nausea of dimension hopping, you look up at the sky. The dragons are circling, not enemies, but creatures waiting for a command. You have the bend will shout. You have the dominance. The skies of Solstheim are no longer a ceiling, they are a playground. And that, my friends, is where our next adventure lies. With the first Dragonborn gone, the skies above Solstheim feel different. They are no longer a ceiling of oppression, a constant reminder of a superior power watching your every move from the summit of Apocrypha. Now they are a vacancy, a throne room without a king, waiting for someone with the lung capacity to fill it, and you, having just absorbed the soul of the only other being who could contest your claim, are ready to take that seat. But to truly rule the ash-choked horizon, you need to master the art of the shout that made Miraak a tyrant in the first place: bend will. The acquisition of this power is a journey in itself, one that likely took you to the frozen northern precipice of Severin's Watch before you ever set foot in the final battle. It's a core in-game fact that Severin's Watch is unique. It is the only location in the entirety of the game, including Skyrim and Solstheim, where a word wall is guarded by both a dragon and a dragon priest. This places it high on the list of places you really don't want to visit without a full stock of healing potions, yet the game compels you there. You trudge through the snow, fight through the Draugr Deathlords, and finally learn the first word of the shout, goal or earth. But knowing the word and understanding the concept are two different things. Hermaeus Mora, in his infinite tentacled wisdom, trickles the remaining knowledge to you through the black books. You learn Ha, mind, and finally Dov, dragon. When you put them together, Golhar Dov, you aren't just shouting loud noises, you are projecting a psychic shockwave that forces the very fabric of the world to align with your desires. The stones are cleansed, the people are freed from their sleepwalking slavery, and finally the ultimate prize, the dragons themselves must bow. Let's set the scene. You're wandering the ash wastes near Tel Mithrin. The ground is grey and dusty. The giant mushrooms looming like silent sentinels. A shadow passes over you, a blood dragon circling with intent. Usually this is where you draw your bow or charge a lightning bolt, but today you wait. You let it land or hover, and then you unleash the full shout. The visual effect is distinct, a swirling blue energy that wraps around the beast head, vastly different from the orange fire or white frost you're used to seeing. The dragon roars not in pain, but in a sudden, as jarring realignment of its loyalties. It lands heavily, kicking up a cloud of ash, and lowers its head. This is the moment every Elder Scrolls player dreamed of since the first trailer for Skyrim dropped in 2011. You approach the snout of the beast. The interaction prompt changes from Search Dragon to Ride Dragon. You press the button. Your character climbs onto the neck, settling in just behind the horns. The dragon launches into the air, the wings beating with a sound like heavy canvas snapping in a gale. The ground falls away, the netch jellies and mud crabs become specks. You are flying. Now we have to address the elephant, or rather the Dover, in the room. The reality of dragon riding in the Dragonborn DLC is a subject of intense, often hilarious community debate. Players expected a simulator. They wanted to grab the reins and steer the dragon manually, banking through the canyons of the Velothi Mountains like they were piloting a fighter jet. What we got was, well, a bit more like a very aggressive reptilian bus tour. You cannot directly steer the dragon. It flies in a set orbit around a target area. You can tell it to attack a specific enemy, or you can tell it to land, but you cannot freely explore the map from the back of your new pet. This mechanic has divided fans for over a decade. One camp argues it was a massive letdown. A rail shooter experience tacked onto an open-world masterpiece. They point out the clunky controls and the fact that half the time, the dragon just circles endlessly while you try to aim a spell at a mudcrab 50 feet below. The other camp, the lore apologists, and I say that with love, argue that this limitation actually makes sense. You aren't training the dragon, you're bending its will. It is a wild, intelligent, immortal being that you have temporarily bludgeoned into submission. It's not a horse. It doesn't know what giddy up means. It knows how to patrol and how to kill. You're merely a passenger pointing out who to kill next. Despite the lack of direct control, the experience is undeniably atmospheric. Flying over Solstheim offers a perspective you simply can't get from the ground. You see the sheer devastation of the Red Year. From high above, the southern coast isn't just a rocky shore, it's a graveyard of shattered geography. I'm buried under layers of hardened magma. You see the layout of Raven Rock, a desperate little colony clinging to life against the grey wastes. You see the floating majestic architecture of Tel Mithrin, looking like a collection of spores ready to burst, and dominating the southern skyline always is Red Mountain. From the back of a dragon, the volcano looks even more imposing, its plume of smoke a constant reminder that this land is alive and angry. Combat from Dragonback is a chaotic, joyous mess. You can cast spells, though aiming is a nightmare due to the constant swaying and circling. If you're a melee character, you're mostly just sitting there looking cool until the dragon lands, but the dragon itself is a weapon. You can command it to breathe fire or frost on targets below. Watching a camp of reavers panic as a dragon strafes their fortifications is deeply satisfying. They shoot arrows that bounce harmlessly off the scales, while you sit comfortably on the neck, perhaps eating a sweet roll, directing the carnage like a conductor of an orchestra made of flame and screaming. There is also an obscure lore tidbit hidden in the dialogue of these tamed dragons. If you use Bend Will on a named dragon, like Odafing, whom you can summon to Solstheim, though he might take a while to cross the sea, he has specific dialogue acknowledging your power. But even the generic dragons once bent will sometimes speak to you before they take off. They might say, "I will carry you, Theory," or "Your voice is strong." It's a subtle reminder that dragons in the Elder Scrolls are not beasts. They are highly intelligent debaters who view violence as a form of argument. By shouting them into submission, you haven't just beaten them in a fight, you have won the debate. You have proved your truth is stronger than theirs. In the metaphysics of the Thuum, reality is just a consensus, and you have the loudest voice. However, the mechanic does have its quirks. Fast travel is one of them. While you can't manually fly to a destination, you can open your map while mounted and fast travel to any discovered location. The game treats this as the dragon flying you there. It's the ultimate flex, arriving at the Temple of Miraak not on foot, breathless and covered in ash, but descending from the clouds on a legendary dragon. It adds a layer of role-playing immersion that almost makes up for the lack of manual steering. Almost. Let's not forget the sheer absurdity that can occur. Sometimes the dragon will decide to land in a spot that simply doesn't fit a dragon. You'll find yourself hovering awkwardly over a dense forest patch, the dragon's wings clipping through trees, while a bear roars at its underbelly. Or you might try to land in Raven Rock, causing the entire town guard to draw weapons, creating a massive brawl that you didn't intend to start. Sorry, I just needed to park my apocalyptic reptile to sell some loot at the market. Doesn't really hold up in court. There is a deeper, darker implication to this power, one that connects back to the themes of the DLC. When you use Bend Will, the visual effect on the dragon, that shimmering oily blue aura, is identical to the aura that surrounded the Allmaker stones when Miraak controlled them. It implies that you are using the exact same method of domination that he did. You're not befriending these creatures, you are enslaving them. The morality of this is rarely discussed by the NPCs, who are mostly just terrified that a dragon is landing in their backyard. But for the player, it poses a question. Are you a hero, or just a new master? The sensation of flight also serves a practical purpose in gameplay. Solstheim is vertical. The terrain is jagged, filled with cliffs and canyons that are a pain to navigate on foot. Riding a dragon allows you to bypass the tedious climbing and jumping. You can spot hidden locations from the air, peaks of Dwemer ruins jutting out of the snow, or the telltale smoke of a remote bandit camp that you might have missed from the ground. It turns the island from a maze into a map, giving you the strategic advantage of a general surveying the battlefield. As the novelty of flight settles into a comfortable routine, you begin to use it as a tool rather than a toy. Sayest. You call a dragon to help you take down a particularly tough lurker on the coast. You use it to quickly traverse the distance between the Skaal village and the Sunstone. The dragon becomes an extension of your arsenal, a living, breathing shout that you can deploy at will. And every time you command it to fly, and the music swells, that classic Jeremy Soule score infused with the darker, tribal notes of the Dragonborn soundtrack, you feel the true weight of your title. You're not just a warrior, you are Dovahkiin. Eventually, though, you have to come down. The air is thin, and there are secrets buried deep beneath the earth that no dragon can reach. The skies have been tamed, but the darkness of Solstheim is not limited to the clouds. Hermaeus Mora is not done with you. His influence seeps from the high altitude down into the deepest recesses of the island's history. While riding dragons satisfies the lust for dominance, it does not satisfy the thirst for power. For that you must return to the source. You must go back to the books. You land the dragon on a high peak, perhaps overlooking the sea. It turns to you, nods its head in a gesture that is equal parts respect and resentment, and takes flight, vanishing into the grey mist. You're left alone again, the wind howling in your ears. The adrenaline of the flight fades, replaced by the gnawing curiosity that defines every seeker of knowledge. The black books are waiting. They are heavy in your inventory, whispering promises of abilities that break the rules of the game even more than dragon riding does. You check your gear, you check your potions, you look at the black binding cover of the nearest tome. It's time to leave the fresh air behind and dive back into the ink. The skies are yours, but the mind of a Daedric prince is a labyrinth that requires a different kind of navigation. The sky may belong to the dragons, but the true power in Solstheim, the kind that rewrites the laws of physics rather than just bending them, is buried in the dark, damp corners of the island. We're talking, of course, about the Black Books. If you've been following the path of the Dragonborn, you've already tasted the ink of Apocrypha during your confrontation with Miraak. But stopping there is like visiting a gourmet buffet, eating one breadstick, and leaving. To truly break the game, and let's be honest, that's why we're all here, you need to hunt down the remaining tomes scattered across the ash wastes and Nordic ruins. There are 7 black books in total, though you'll likely stumble upon the Winds of Change or the Sallow Regent first. Physically, they are repulsive objects. They are heavy, bound in a material that looks suspiciously like cured Daedric skin, and they emit a low, throbbing hum that you can feel in your teeth. When you open one in your inventory, you don't just read text. You're subjected to a violent first-person animation where spectral tentacles erupt from the pages, wrap around your vision, and drag your consciousness screaming into oblivion. It is a visceral transition, one that never quite loses its ability to make you wince, no matter how many times you endure it. Welcome back to Apocrypha. If you thought the summit was bad, the depths are worse. This is a realm of infinite, spiraling towers of books, green sludge, and knowledge that maddens the mortal mind. The atmosphere here is thick and oily. The sound design is a masterpiece of discomfort. The wet slapping of tentacles, the rustling of billions of pages turning simultaneously, and the distant oceanic roar of Hermaeus Mora's presence. It's the ultimate library, if the librarian was a Shoggoth who hated you personally. Navigating these side quests is a unique challenge. Unlike the straightforward dungeons of Skyrim, the levels inside the Black Books are puzzles of light and darkness. In the Sallow Regent, for instance, the darkness itself is weaponized. Step into the shadows, and your health drains rapidly. The sound of sizzling flesh filling your ears. You have to move from light source to light source, clinging to the glow of floating candles or glowing scry plants like a moth terrified of the dark. It turns the game into a tense platformer, forcing you to use spells like Candlelight or Magelight in ways you never bothered to before. The denizens of this realm are just as unsettling. You have the Seekers, floating robed figures that look like they walked off the set of a horror movie. They're quiet until they spot you, at which point they unleash a barrage of magical attacks that drain your stats. And just when you think you've killed one, it splits into an illusionary clone, then forcing you to guess which tentacled nightmare is the real one. Then there are the Lurkers, amphibious giants that vomit acid and stomp with the force of a hydraulic press. Fighting a lurker on a narrow bridge of books suspended over a sea of ink is a lesson in spatial awareness. One wrong move, one stagger effect, and you're falling into the void, only to respawn at the start of the chapter with a blackened screen and a bruised ego. But why endure this? Why wade through the muck of a Daedric prince's subconscious? Because the rewards at the end of these books are, without exaggeration, some of the most potent passive abilities in the entire Elder Scrolls history. When you reach the end of a Black Book level, you're presented with 3 floating green sigils. You can choose only one, but here's the kicker. You can return to the book at any time to swap your choice. This flexibility allows you to tailor your build on the fly, adapting to whatever challenges Solstheim throws at you. Let's talk about the fan favourite, the black market power from the book Untold Legends. This ability allows you to summon a Dremora merchant for 15 seconds. Now, this isn't just any merchant. This is a Dremora who seems genuinely bored by his existence in Oblivion and is surprisingly polite. He buys your junk. He sells Daedric weapons and armour. He has 2,000 gold. For a player deep in a dungeon, they're over-encumbered with dragon bones and Dwemer scrap, this guy is a saviour. You don't have to drop loot. You just summon your personal demonic shopkeeper, sell your trash, and keep moving. It's the ultimate convenience feature. Lore-friendly Amazon Prime delivery straight from hell. Then there's the ability that solves the oldest, most frustrating problem in Skyrim, friendly fire. The book The Winds of Change offers the Companion's Insight ability. With this active, your attacks, shouts, and destruction spells do 0 damage to your followers. Finally, you can unleash a fireball into a melee scrum without worrying about roasting Lydia or Jazago. You can shout unrelenting force and watch your enemies fly away while your companion stands firm, unaffected. It changes the entire dynamic of combat, allowing for a reckless aggression that was previously impossible if you cared about your followers' survival. For the mages out there, the Filament and Filigree book offers Secret of Arcana. For 30 seconds, your spells cost absolutely no magicka. 0. This might sound short, but 30 seconds is an eternity in combat. You can channel the Master Level Lightning Storm spell continuously, melting dragon priests into ash without draining a single point of your blue bar. This specific ability is the centre of a massive community debate and exploit discussion. Fans quickly discovered that if you activate Secret of Arcana and then start casting the telekinesis spell to hold an object, you can fast travel across the map while still holding the button. The game calculates that you cast the spell for hours of in-game travel time, instantly levelling your alteration skill from 15 to 100 in a single loading screen. Is it cheating? Is it chim? Or is it just Hermaeus Mora rewarding you for thinking outside the box? The community generally agrees that if the Prince of Knowledge gives you a tool to break reality, you use it. There is a fascinating obscure lore tidbit regarding the text inside these books. If you look closely at the texture files for the pages of the Black Books, or if you have a high-resolution monitor and zoom in, you'll see that the text isn't just random gibberish. Some of it is taken from H.P. Lovecraft's works, specifically the Dunwich Horror and the Call of Cthulhu. It's a direct nod from the developers at Bethesda to the primary inspiration for Hermaeus Mora. But in universe, the lore suggests that these books contain knowledge that was struck from the world. Things that were too dangerous, too contradictory, or simply too weird to exist in Mundus end up here. When you read a Black Book, you are reading the rejected drafts of reality. The audio design deserves another mention here because it plays into a subtle psychological trick. While inside the books, the background ambient track includes whispered voices. If you wear headphones, and I highly recommend you do for that full ASMR effect, you can hear distinct phrases. Some players claim to hear Dragonborn, while others hear Come Closer. It creates a sense of paranoia. You are never alone in Apocrypha. Hermaeus Mora is always watching. His physical form, that wretched mass of eyes and tentacles, will often manifest in the acidic pools to talk to you. Was his voice slow and unskippable? He treats you like a specimen in a jar, a fascinating little insect that he's decided to empower just to see what happens. One of the most tragic implications of delving into these books is the connection to the other seekers you find. Throughout the DLC, you encounter madmen who have been driven insane by the Black Books. There is a wizard near Tel Mithrin who is obsessed with finding them, and his dialogue becomes increasingly erratic. By collecting them all, by eagerly diving into the green abyss for power, you're essentially following the same path to madness. You're becoming like Miraak, like the mad wizard, sacrificing your humanity for a plus 10% boost to bartering prices, or the ability to summon a drum. And let's not forget the sheer utility of Scholar's Insight from the Winds of Change. This ability gives you 2 skill points instead of 1 for every skill book you read. If you're a completionist trying to max out your character, this is mandatory. It turns every bookshelf in the game into a treasure trove of XP. It fundamentally changes how you explore. You stop ignoring books and start scanning every title, hungry for that skill increase. You become a voracious reader, a true disciple of Mora, hoarding knowledge not for its own sake but for the power it grants. When you finally choose your reward and select the book to return to Solstheim, the transition is abrupt. The green sky vanishes, replaced by the grey ash or the dark stone of a dungeon. The silence of the real world is deafening after the constant slithering of Apocrypha. You feel heavier, anchored by gravity again. But you are stronger. You have a Dremora butler in your pocket. You have magic that costs nothing. You have knowledge that no mortal was meant to possess. You close the book, the tentacles retract. It looks like just an ordinary, ugly book again. You shove it into your pack, right next to your cheese wheels and potions. But you know better. You know that a piece of you is still back there wandering the stacks, and a piece of the library has come back with you. You have gazed into the abyss, and the abyss has given you a coupon for 10% better prices and a summonable demon. A fair trade, wouldn't you say? Now, wipe the ink off your boots. We're done with the abstract horror for a moment. It's time to get back to the physical, to the tangible, to the art of crafting something that can actually stop a warhammer from crushing your ribcage. We're heading north, to the Skaal village, where the secrets of ice and steel await. We leave the humid, ink-stained nightmare of Apocrypha behind, and emerge into the biting, pristine cold of northern Solstheim. The transition is a shock to the system. The air here doesn't smell of old paper and tentacles, it smells of pine needles, ozone, and the kind of cold that freezes the moisture in your nose instantly. We are heading to the Skaal village, a settlement that feels less like a town and more like a huddled argument against the elements. The wind howls constantly, stripping the heat from your armour, and the snow is piled high against the sturdy timber halls. But something is wrong in this frozen paradise. If you wander near the Great Hall, you'll overhear a frantic conversation between Dior Woodcutter and Fenari Strongvoice. The village blacksmith Baldur Ironshaper has vanished. For a community that relies on its tools to survive the harsh environment, losing a blacksmith is like losing a limb. This kicks off the quest, a new source of Stalhrim, a pivotal moment for any player who cares about high-end gear. You track Baldur's kidnappers to an abandoned lodge in the snowy wilderness, and who do you find waiting there? The Thalmor? Of course, because it wouldn't be a proper Skyrim adventure without high elves in black robes trying to ruin everyone's day. These aren't just random patrols, this is a specialised unit led by a justiciar named Ancarion. They have dragged poor Baldur out here not for his political views but for his secrets. Specifically, they want to know how to forge Stalhrim, the legendary enchanted ice of the ancient Nords. Now, you have a choice here. You can do the classic Dragonborn thing and slaughter them all, looting their glass armour and feeling morally superior. Or, if your speech skill is high enough, you can actually negotiate with Ancarion. You can convince him to leave the map with you. Or even sell him the Stalhrim weapons later. It's a rare instance of non-violent resolution with the Thalmor, though let's be honest. Most of us just introduce them to the business end of a warhammer. It's faster, and they're Thalmor. Once you've dealt with the elves and rescued Baldur, he returns to the village, grateful and ready to teach you. But he doesn't just hand you a book. He tells you about a hidden source of Stalhrim at North Shore Landing. You have to travel there, verify the map, and mine a sample. This brings us to a crucial mechanic that often confuses players. You cannot mine Stalhrim with a standard pickaxe. You need an ancient Nordic pickaxe. This tool is a relic in itself. You might have found one in the Raven Rock mine, or perhaps Baldur gives you one, but holding it feels different. It swings slower, heavier. When you strike a deposit of Stalhrim, which looks like a coffin-sized chunk of pale, blue ice embedded in the rock, it doesn't chip away like iron or ebony, it resonates. The sound is a dull, magical thud, like hitting a drum wrapped in velvet. It takes time. You chip away at the sarcophagus-like casing, collecting the chunks of enchanted ice that somehow remain solid even in your warm inventory. The lore behind this material is fascinating and a bit morbid. Stalhrim was originally used by the ancient Morans to encase their dead. It served as a preservation method, a way to keep the bodies of honoured warriors perfect for eternity. So, when you're mining Stalhrim, you're essentially cracking open ancient graves. You're harvesting the sacred wrapping of the dead to make yourself a new pair of boots. It's a bit grim when you think about it. But then again, we loot urns in Draugr crypts for 5 gold pieces, so our moral compass is already pretty flexible. Once you have the raw material and the knowledge, and the ebony smithing perk, which is a prerequisite, you can head to a forge. The crafting process is visually distinct. Unlike steel that glows orange or ebony that stays dark, Stalhrim doesn't melt. It becomes malleable, like a thick blue clay, under the heat of the forge, only to harden instantly when cooled. The resulting armour and weapons are jagged, crystalline, and unmistakably magical. They look like they were carved from a glacier by a storm Atronach. Here is the core in-game fact that makes all this effort worthwhile. Stalhrim equipment is lighter than dragonbone but stronger than glass, for light armour, or ebony, for heavy armour. It sits in a sweet spot of utility. But the real reason to use it lies in a hidden mechanic. Stalhrim has an innate property called Resist Frost, but more importantly, any frost enchantment placed on a Stalhrim item is 25% stronger. This leads us to the obscure lore tidbit that min-maxers love. This 25% boost doesn't just apply to frost damage, it applies to chaos damage as well, because the chaos enchantment, which has a 50% chance to deal fire, frost and shock damage, contains the keyword frost. Because of how the game's code handles these keywords, the Stalhrim buff amplifies the entire enchantment. If you put chaos damage and frost damage on a Stalhrim sword, you're creating a weapon of mass destruction that hits harder than almost anything else in the game. You aren't just hitting enemies, you're deleting them from the save file. This specific interaction has fueled years of community debate regarding fashion souls versus stats. One camp of players swears by Daedric armor because it looks terrifying. Spikes, black metal, red glowing eyes. It screams endgame boss. Stalhrim, on the other hand, looks polarizing. The heavy armor has a horned helmet that some players think looks majestic and Viking-like, while others think it looks like a goofy ice cream cone. The light armor is often praised for its sleek fur-lined aesthetic, fitting perfectly with a rugged survivalist playthrough, but that blue colour, it clashes with everything. Trying to match a Stalhrim shield with a non-Stalhrim set is a fashion disaster. Players often argue on forums about whether the 25% frost buff is worth looking like a walking popsicle. Sure, you do 300 damage per swing, they say, but you look like you're wearing the set from Frozen on Broadway. The counter-argument, of course, is that dead enemies can't critique your outfit, and when you're one-shotting a legendary dragon with a Stalhrim bow enchanted with chaos and frost, you really don't care about colour coordination. There's also a subtle immersive element to wearing full Stalhrim on Solstheim. The NPCs notice. Guards will comment on your armour, just as calling it Skaal work, or remarking on the chill radiating from it. It ties you to the land in a way that Daedric or Dragonbone doesn't. You are wearing the island itself. You're clad in the history of the Nords, using the very ice that preserves their dead to protect your life. It feels appropriate for the Dragonborn, a figure of prophecy and power, to be wrapped in something so ancient and elemental. Mining Stalhrim also becomes a lucrative side hustle. The deposits respawn eventually, seriously meaning you can return to the source, harvest the ice, craft high-value weapons, enchant them, and sell them for a massive profit. It becomes a ritual. Travel to the Skaal village, check in with Beldor, head to the deposits, mine, craft, profit. It integrates you into the economy of the island. You aren't just a saviour, you're a tradesman. And let's not forget the sheer satisfaction of the sound design when you equip the armour. It doesn't clank like metal. It has a crystalline chime to it, a heavy, resonant sound of ice settling against fur. Drawing a Stalhrim sword produces a sharp, singing ring, distinct from the rasp of steel. These little audio cues reinforce the idea that you are wielding something supernatural, but crafting this armour isn't cheap. Sure, the ice is free if you mine it, but you need other materials. Leather strips, steel ingots for reinforcement, and perhaps most importantly, quicksilver. You'll find yourself scouring vendors for supplies, which drains your gold reserves faster than you might expect. And speaking of draining your gold reserves, you're going to need every septim you can get for what comes next. You see, while Stalhrim protects your body, there is another venture on Solstheim that demands your wallet. It's an investment opportunity that starts with a courier letter and ends with one of the most complex multi-stage dungeons in the game. You've mastered the Ice of the North. Now it's time to turn your attention to the Ash of the South. There is a dig site near Raven Rock that has stalled, and the foreman is looking for a partner with deep pockets. So, put on your shiny new ice armour, sell your excess gear to the Dremora merchant and check your coin purse. We are heading to Kolbjorn Barrow, where the dust of the past is waiting to be disturbed, and where your gold is going to disappear faster than a sweet roll at a guard's picnic. From the pristine, frozen heights of the Skaal village, we descend back into the grey, choking ash of the southern wastes. You've got your Stalhrim armour, you've got your Black Book powers, and hopefully you've got a coin purse that is heavily weighed down by the spoils of war. Because what we're about to do next is the ultimate exercise in high fantasy capitalism. We're going to fund an archaeological expedition. South of Raven Rock, you will find a location marked on your map as Kolbjorn Barrow. At first glance it is underwhelming. It's barely a hole in the ground, surrounded by a few desperate Dunmer digging in the dirt. Standing amidst the dust clouds is a Dunmer named Rallis Sedaris. He looks tired, slightly manic, and he has a proposition for you. He claims there is a massive Nordic ruin buried here, filled with treasure, but he lacks the funds to excavate it. This kicks off the quest Unearthed, which is essentially Skyrim's version of a money pit renovation project. The mechanic here is unique. Unlike other dungeons where you just barge in and kill everything, Call Beyond Barrow requires you to act as a silent partner. Rallis asks for an initial investment of 1,000 gold. You pay him, and then you have to wait, and wait, and wait. Eventually, the inevitable courier, that supernatural being who can find you in the depths of oblivion or on the throat of the world, will track you down with a letter from Rallis. You return to the dig site, only to find that things have gone wrong. The Draugr have woken up, the miners are dead. Rallis is standing outside wringing his hands, claiming he doesn't know what happened. You clear the dungeon, which at this stage is small, just a few chambers. You kill the undead, make the site safe. Giant and Rallis asks for more money to hire new miners, 2,000 gold this time, then 3,000. Finally, 5,000. In total, you're going to pour 11,000 gold into this hole. For a low-level player, this is bankruptcy. For a high-level Dragonborn, it's a Tuesday. But the genius of this quest is the environmental storytelling. Every time you return, the excavation has gone deeper. The architecture reveals itself slowly. What started as a dirt pit becomes a grand, spiralling descent into ancient Nord history. And every time you return, there are more fresh bodies. The must-do aspect here isn't just about spending money, it's about the loot, specifically the relics of Azidal. Throughout the excavation, you will find pieces of a unique armour set that offer enchantments you cannot find anywhere else in the game. The most famous of these are Azidal's boots of water walking. Yes, you read that right. Equip these boots, and you can sprint across the surface of the water like a skipping stone. It completely changes how you explore. No more swimming and dealing with slaughterfish. You just run over the waves to reach distant shipwrecks or island hopping across the Telvanni coast. It is a core in-game fact that once you put these boots on, you rarely take them off. Then there is Azidal's Ring of Arcana. This innocent-looking piece of jewellery grants you two unique spells, Ignite and Freeze. Ignite, in particular, Gyass's is a favourite among the community's build crafters. It shoots a bolt of fire that sets enemies ablaze for 15 seconds. On its own, it seems weak. But if you combine it with the illusion perk Aspect of Terror, which bugs out and boosts fire damage, and the destruction perk Intense Flames, Ignite becomes a machine gun of damage over time. You can stack the burning effect, watching dragon health bars melt away while you stand back and admire your investment. But the true prize of Call Beyond Barrow is the entity waiting at the bottom. The reason the miners keep dying, the reason Rallis seems to be losing his mind, is because the barrow belongs to Azidal. Azidal isn't just another dragon priest, he is the enchanter. According to obscure lore found in the book Azidal's Descent, this man was a genius of the Merethic era. He was a Nord who was so obsessed with magical mastery that he left his people to learn from the elves, the Eyelids, the Felmer, the Chimere, and even the Dwemer. He mastered their techniques and then returned to his people, offering his services to the 500 companions of Ysgramor. That's right, the legendary weapons that drove the Snow Elves out of Skyrim. Azidal enchanted them. He is the Oppenheimer of the ancient Nordic world, a man who escalated warfare through magical innovation. But his ambition didn't stop there. He eventually sought out the knowledge of the dragons, became a priest, a Dessustinlum, and delved into oblivion magic so deep it drove him mad. He was sealed away in Call Beyond Barrow, not dead, but waiting. When you finally pay the last instalment of 5,000 gold and return for the final time, the atmosphere is heavy with dread. The chanting is loud now, the miners are all dead. Again, Rallis is gone. You descend through the now massive complex, fighting through high-level Draugr and puzzles that require you to manipulate the floor tiles to match the rotation of owl and whale carvings. It culminates in a boss fight against Azidal himself. Azidal is a floating lich who loves fire. He uses a unique fire stream spell that looks like a continuous flamethrower. The room is filled with traps, and he teleports around, making him a nuisance to pin down. But compared to Miraak or Karstaag, he is manageable. The real conflict comes after you defeat him. You find Rallis Sedaris at the back of the room, dazed and confused. He claims he was under a spell, that Azidal was controlling him the whole time. He didn't mean to sacrifice all those miners. He didn't mean to steal your money, though the money's gone. He begs for his life. This moment has sparked a long-standing debate in the Skyrim community. Is Ralis guilty? On one hand, mind control is a very real thing in the Elder Scrolls universe. Either we've seen Miraak do it, we've seen vampires do it. It's entirely plausible that Azidal, a master enchanter, used Ralis as a puppet to dig him out. On the other hand, Ralis is the one who kept asking for the money. Ralis is the one who hired the miners. Some players argue that his dazed act is just that, an act. They execute him on the spot, a grim form of justice for the dozens of innocent labourers who died fueling his ambition. However, if you choose to spare him, you gain something valuable. Ralis becomes a follower, and not just any follower. He's one of the only dual-wielding followers in the game, and his level cap is 60. He is an absolute blender in combat. If you give him 2 decent swords and some light armour, he will tear through enemies with a ferocity that rivals even the best housecarls. This leads to the pragmatic evil approach. Sure, he might be a mass murderer by proxy, but have you seen his DPS? The Unearthed quest is a masterclass in pacing. It forces you to leave and come back, making the barrow feel like a living, evolving project rather than a static dungeon. It drains your resources, making the final reward feel earned, and the armour set you complete. The relics of Azidal is genuinely useful. The chess piece gives you a chance to paralyse enemies who hit you. The gauntlets allow your wards to absorb magicka. The helmet increases the range of conjuration spells. Wearing 4 pieces grants a +10 to enchanting, which is critical for players looking to craft the ultimate gear. There is also a hidden layer of tragedy to the location. If you read Raelis's journals, which you find scattered throughout the dig site during each phase, you can see his mental decline. He starts off optimistic, just a guy looking for a big break. Then the whispers start. He complains about headaches. He starts losing time. He writes about a voice telling him what to do. It's a classic Lovecraftian descent into madness, mirroring the very journey Azidal took thousands of years ago. By the end, the handwriting is frantic, the thoughts disjointed. Whether you kill him or spare him, Ralis is a broken man. So you walk out of Kolbiorn Barrow, 11,000 gold poorer, but wearing boots that let you walk on water and a ring that lets you cast the most efficient fire spell in the game. You leave behind a tomb that is now finally silent. The ancient enchanter put to rest for good. The dust settles over the excavation site. The tents of the dead miners flap in the wind. It's a sombre victory, but as you stand there, looking out over the ash plains toward the sea, you realise you have a new problem. You have all this loot, dragon bones, Stalhrim ore, Azidal's relics, and nowhere to put it. You're carrying too much. You need a base of operations, a place to store your trophies, craft your potions, and maybe sleep for a few hours without a tentacle monster trying to invade your dreams. Luckily, there is a vacant property in Raven Rock. Well, not vacant yet. It's currently occupied by a prominent family with some dark secrets of their own. But in the world of the Dragonborn, occupied is just a temporary state. It's time to head back to town, navigate the complex politics of House Redoran, and secure yourself a home. Returning to Raven Rock from the dusty excavation of Kolbiorn Barrow, your pockets are lighter but your inventory is heavier. You trudge past the bulwark, the massive wall that keeps the ash spawn at bay, and into the gloom of the settlement. The Redoran Guard nod as you pass, their bone mould armour clicking softly. You've done good work for the colony, reopening the mines, stopping the ash spawn attacks, but you still feel like a transient. You're living out of the retching Netch Inn, sleeping on a bedroll that smells of vague fungal dampness and listening to Geldis Sadri polish glasses all night. It's no way for a hero of legend to live. You need a base, you need a home. And as luck would have it, the most luxurious property in town is about to experience a sudden vacancy. To claim it, however, you have to wade into the murky waters of Dunmer politics. This isn't like becoming Thane of Whiterun, where you kill a dragon and the Jarl throws a housecarl at you. This is House Redoran. Respect is earned through subterfuge and blade work. The opportunity begins when you are approached by Second Councillor Adril Arano. He's a stern, suspicious elf who looks like he hasn't slept since the Red Year. He pulls you aside, voice low, and tells you that there is a plot against the life of Councillor Morvain, the leader of Raven Rock. This kicks off the quest served cold, which feels less like a dungeon crawl and more like an episode of a crime drama set in a mushroom kingdom. Your first task is simple surveillance. Arano suspects the Yulin family has a grudge dating back to the execution of a traitor years ago. He sends you to the Yulin ancestral tomb to wait for a contact. Standing in that cold stone crypt, surrounded by the urns of the dead, is a quintessential Skyrim mood. You wait. The air is stale. Then, inevitably, the silence is broken not by a contact, but by a figure approaching the offerings. It's Tilisu Severin, the matriarch of the wealthiest family in town. She claims she's just paying respects, but the timing is suspicious. The investigation leads you to break into Severin Manor itself. This is where the narrative takes a sharp turn into the Real Housewives of Raven Rock. You sneak through the opulent halls, dodging family members, and pick the lock on their safe. Inside, you find evidence that the Severins aren't just disgruntled nobles, they are the masterminds behind the assassination plot. But the shocking reveal isn't just their treachery, it's their affiliation. They are working with the Morag Tong. For those of you who started your journey in Skyrim, the name might just sound like another bandit faction. But for the lore veterans, this is a spine-tingling drop. The Morag Tong is the ancient assassins guild of Morrowind. Unlike the Dark Brotherhood, who are a cult of chaotic murderers worshipping Sithis and the Night Mother, the Morag Tong is a legally sanctioned organisation. They follow Mephala, the Daedric Prince of Lies, Sex and Murder, but they operate under a strict code of honourable writs. In Morrowind, they were the mechanism by which great houses settled disputes without open war. They are professionals. They don't leave notes with handprints, they leave bodies and paperwork. Discovering the Morag Tong on Solstheim adds a layer of sophisticated danger to the DLC. They aren't just thugs in leather, they wear unique chitin armour that looks like insectoid carapace, complete with full-face helmets that give them an alien, unfeeling appearance. The fact that the Severin family is part of this ancient order means the threat to Councillor Morvain is existential. The climax of this quest sends you to Ashfallow Citadel, an old imperial fort that has been partially buried by ash and reclaimed by the assassins. This dungeon is a gauntlet. The Morag Tong assassins are fast, dual-wielding daggers and using invisibility potions. They fight with a coordination that puts bandits to shame. You fight your way through the crumbling corridors, dodging traps that haven't been triggered in 200 years until you reach the inner sanctum. Here, you confront Vendil Severin and his cohorts. The battle is frantic. Vendil is a skilled spellsword, mixing destruction magic with flurry attacks, but once the dust settles and the last assassin falls, you're left with the realization that you have just wiped out a noble house. You return to Raven Rock, present the evidence to Councillor Morvain, and save his life. The gratitude of House Redoran is not expressed in hugs, but in practical rewards. Morvain gives you a hefty sum of gold, and more importantly, the deed to Severin Manor. Finally, you have a home. And let's be clear, Severin Manor is widely considered by the community to be the best player home in the entire game for one specific reason: layout efficiency. When you step inside, you aren't greeted by a loading screen to get to the basement. Everything is on one level. You walk into the main chamber and there, arranged in a perfect semicircle, are all your crafting stations. The forge, the workbench, the grindstone, the alchemy lab, and the enchanting table are all within spitting distance of each other. For the crafting-obsessed player, the one who spends hours enchanting iron daggers to drive up the local economy, this house is nirvana. You don't have to run upstairs to grab an ingot and then downstairs to hammer it out. You can stand in the middle of the room, pivot, and access everything. It is a masterpiece of user interface design disguised as a house. The storage is ample, with plenty of chests, sacks, and barrels right next to the relevant stations. It respects your time in a way that the sprawling mansions of Hearthfire often don't. But there is a debate that rages in the forums. Is Severin Manor too lonely? The aesthetic is undeniably Dunmer. The lighting is dim, cast by glowing fungi and candles. The architecture is bone and stone, rounded and organic, like living inside a giant hollowed-out crab shell. It is beautiful in a stark, alien way, but it is also cold. Also, you cannot move your spouse or children here without mods. If you adopted Sophie from the streets of Windhelm, you can't bring her to live in your cool mushroom house. This makes Severin Manor the ultimate bachelor pad for the solitary hero. It's a place for business, for crafting, for storing the Mask of Miraak and the Bloodskal blade on the numerous weapon racks. It is not a home for a family, it is a bunker for a demigod. There is also an obscure, slightly creepy detail about the house that longtime players might remember. In the original release of the DLC, the mannequins in the basement had a glitch where they would move when you weren't looking. You'd walk downstairs to drop off some armour, and a wooden mannequin would be standing in the middle of the room staring at you. Or worse, you'd hear footsteps when you were alone. It was terrifying, adding an unintentional horror element to the home. While patched out, the eerie vibe remains. The silence of the manor is heavy. The music that plays inside is a somber, low-strings track that emphasises isolation. Despite the gloom, owning Severin Manor changes your status in Raven Rock. You're no longer an outlander. The guards address you with respect. You are a citizen. You have a bed that grants the well-rested bonus. You have a safe place to store the literal tons of dragon bones you've been dragging around. It becomes your command centre for the rest of the DLC. From here, you plan your expeditions. You mix your potions of resist fire before heading back to the Ash Wastes. You temper your Stalhrim sword until it reaches legendary quality. The acquisition of this house also highlights the cultural shift you've undergone. You started in Skyrim, living in timber halls with thatched roofs, drinking mead. Now, you are living in a subterranean stone pod, drinking sujama and wearing armour made of ice. You have acclimated. The ash doesn't bother you as much. The red eyes of the Dunmer don't seem as judgmental. You're part of the ecosystem of Solstheim now. However, as you stand in your perfect crafting room, looking at your enchanting table, you might realise something. You have the gear, you have the resources, you have the money, but your enchantments, they could be better. You've hit the cap of what standard enchanting can do. You've read the books, you've used the potions. But there is a level of magical mastery that goes beyond the standard skill tree. There is a way to create staves, to wield magic without spending magicka, to access powers that haven't been seen since the glory days of House Telvanni. To unlock this potential, you need to leave the comfort of your new home. You need to travel to the eastern coast, where the giant mushrooms grow taller than towers, and seek out a wizard who makes the College of Winterhold look like a kindergarten. He is arrogant, he is ancient, and he is absolutely insufferable, but he has something you need. So lock the door to Severin Manor, make sure your mannequins are staying put. We're heading to Tel Mithryn. Prepare your ego, because it's about to get bruised. You're going to meet Master Neloth, and he is going to remind you that being Dragonborn is impressive, but being a Telvanni Master Wizard is divine. Leaving the comfortable, albeit lonely, stone halls of Severin Manor, you turn your gaze southeast. The landscape shifts dramatically here. The ash gives way to something far more alien and vibrant. You are entering the fungal forests of the Telvanni coast, a slice of Morrowind transplanted onto Solstheim's jagged edge. Towering above the landscape like organic skyscrapers are the giant Emperor Parasol mushrooms, and the crown jewel of this bizarre skyline is Tel Mithryn. This is the domain of Master Neloth, and if you thought the Greybeards were aloof or the Jarls were demanding, you are about to receive a masterclass in wizardly arrogance. Approaching Tel Mithryn is an experience in itself. The path winds through clusters of glowing mushrooms and strange flora that pulse with magical energy. You might hear the mournful, whale-like call of a silt strider, Dusty, the last of her kind on this island, standing near the docks. It's a melancholic sound, a reminder of a bygone era, but you don't have time for nostalgia. You have a tower to climb, or rather to float up. The entrance to the main tower isn't a door or a staircase, it's a magical lift. You step onto a glowing rune at the base of the stalk and suddenly gravity releases its hold. You drift upward, gently spinning, ascending through the hollow stem of the giant mushroom. It is one of the most unique traversal mechanics in the game, a seamless integration of magic and architecture that makes every visit feel special. You emerge into the main chamber, a circular room filled with alchemy ingredients, soul gems, and the distinct crackling hum of high-level magic, and there he is, Master Neloth. He's a Dunmer of indeterminate ancient age, draped in Telvanni robes that look far more expensive than your entire inventory. When you speak to him, he doesn't greet you as the Dragonborn, the saviour of the world, or even a competent adventurer. He treats you like a lab assistant who is late for work. His opening lines are often dismissive, asking if you're the new steward or simply telling you to go away unless you have something interesting to offer. Neloth is a fan-favourite character for a reason. He's hilariously rude. He embodies the pure, unfiltered ego of House Telvanni. He openly mocks the College of Winterhold, calling it a quaint little guild compared to the magical supremacy of his people. He treats everyone around him, including his apprentice Talvas and his apothecary Alinia, as disposable tools. But beneath the insults lies a terrifying competence. He is likely the most powerful mage you will ever meet in Skyrim, capable of teaching you the highest levels of enchanting. But gaining access to his secrets, specifically the Staff Enchanter, requires you to become his errand boy. The quest, Reluctant Steward, begins with a typical Neloth problem. His current steward, Verona, is missing. He doesn't care about her safety, he cares that his tea isn't ready. You have to go find her. Spoiler alert, she's dead, killed by ash spawn. When you return with the news, Neloth's reaction is classic. Dead? Well, that's annoying. Who is going to make my tea? He then tasks you with finding a replacement. This leads to a frantic search around Raven Rock and the wider island, asking people if they want to work for a crazy wizard. Most people laugh in your face. Eventually, you find Drovus Relvi, the shady guy hanging out in the retching netch who is desperate to escape a debt. You hire him, send him to the Mushroom Tower, and Neloth is satisfied. Good. Now, about that tea. Once you have stabilised his household, Neloth opens up his inner sanctum. He grants you access to a locked room in the tower, accessible only by a key he provides. Inside, you find the Staff Enchanter. This is a core in-game fact that changes how magic users play the late game. In the entirety of Skyrim, including all DLCs, this table is the only way to craft magical staves. Before this, staves were random loot drops or quest rewards. Now you can build them. The mechanic is simple but costly. You need an unenchanted staff, which you can buy from Neloth or find in Apocrypha, and a specialised heartstone. Heartstones are rare minerals found in ore deposits across Solstheim, glowing with a faint reddish volcanic energy. Combining these items allows you to create staves of almost any spell you know. Want a Staff of Incinerate? A Staff of Paralyze? A Staff of Dread Zombie? You can make them. This crafting station sparks a significant debate in the community. Are staves actually good? For a low-level mage, a staff is a lifeline when magicka runs out. But by the time you unlock the Staff Enchanter, you're usually a high-level demigod with unlimited magicka thanks to enchanting exploits. Many players argue that staves are useless clutter. However, the counter-argument is compelling. Staves don't use your magicka, they use their own charge. This means you can cast expert and master-level destruction spells continuously without ever dipping into your blue bar. It allows warrior builds to use high-level magic without investing a single point into magicka. It turns a barbarian into a battle mage instantly. Plus, you gain enchanting experience for crafting them. It's a fantastic way to power level the skill if you have a stockpile of heartstones. And let's be honest, walking around with a custom-made Daedric staff of the Storm Atronach just looks cool. It fits the aesthetic of the Dragonborn as a master of all disciplines. Working with Neloth also exposes you to his darker experiments. He is obsessed with heartstones, believing they can replace the heart of a living being to grant immense power, similar to the briar hearts of the Reachmen. He sends you to retrieve a stone, and then, in a moment of pure mad science, he performs surgery on his apprentice, Talvas. Or rather, he tries to. The experiment fails, of course, and you have to clean up the mess. It's a glimpse into the ruthless curiosity of the Telvanni. To them, morality is just an obstacle to knowledge. There is an obscure lore tidbit here for the veterans of the Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind. Master Neloth is actually a returning character. In that game, he lived in a similar mushroom tower in Sadrith Mora, and was just as arrogant, though perhaps a bit less senile. His inclusion in Dragonborn is a direct nod to the fans, bridging the gap of 200 years. He even makes references to the Nerevarine, the hero of Morrowind, suggesting that he was a capable sort, which is high praise coming from him. It anchors Solstheim in a history that feels vast and interconnected. Another hidden interaction involves the Black Book, The Hidden Twilight. Neloth has this book locked inside his Staff Enchanter room. He knows exactly what it is. He knows it leads to Apocrypha, but he hasn't opened it. He's waiting for you. He wants you to take the risk. When you open it and get sucked into Hermaeus Mora's realm, Neloth watches with fascination. When you return, he grills you for information. What did you see? Did you find the knowledge? He is vicariously living through your danger. Too smart to risk his own sanity, but too curious to look away. One of the funniest and most relatable aspects of Neloth is his dialogue regarding the Dragonborn's achievements. If you become the Archmage of the College of Winterhold, Neloth is unimpressed. He calls the title meaningless and suggests the college is barely a kindergarten for magic. If you are the listener of the Dark Brotherhood, he finds it quaint. No matter what you do, you cannot impress him, and honestly, it's refreshing. In a game where everyone constantly praises you as the chosen one, having an old wizard call you an idiot for not knowing how to make tea is weirdly grounding. Spending time in Tel Mithryn also gives you access to unique spells sold by Talvas. He sells the Conjure Ash Guardian spell, which summons a massive rock creature to fight for you. But there's a catch. You must have a Heartstone in your inventory when you cast it. If you don't, the Ash Guardian spawns hostile and attacks you. It's a brilliant mechanic that forces you to prepare, adding a layer of resource management to your conjuration build. The verticality of Tel Mithryn can be a bit of a headache though. The levitation pad is cool, but it's slow, and sometimes followers get stuck. You'll float up, and your follower will just stand at the bottom staring at the ceiling. Or worse, they'll try to float up and glitch through the floor. It's a reminder that for all its magic, the game engine is still held together by duct tape and prayers. But the view from the top of the tower, looking out over the fungal forest and the churning sea, is worth the jank. As you finish your business with Neloth, crafting your staves, buying his spells and enduring his insults, you realise that you have engaged with one of the most complex systems in the DLC. You have mastered the art of enchanting items that cast spells for you. You have dipped your toes into the immoral philosophy of the Telvanni. You have become a more versatile mage, but as you float back down to the ground, leaving the wizard to his experiments, a chill runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the wind. You are strong now, very strong. You have defeated Miraak. You have mastered the Black Books. You have armour of Stalhrim and staves of power. You feel invincible, and that is a dangerous feeling. Because Solstheim has one more challenge waiting for you. A challenge that doesn't care about your titles or your politics. It is a challenge buried in ice, a remnant of a simpler, more brutal time. You have conquered the present, but can you conquer the ghost of the past? It is time to head north again, to a location that isn't even marked on your map until you find the key. It is time to summon a king. We're going to the Castle Karstaag ruins, and you had better bring every healing potion you own, because what we're about to wake up makes the Ebony Warrior look like a training dummy. Leaving the humid, fungal arrogance of Tel Mithryn behind, we find ourselves drawn once again to the biting cold of the north. You might feel invincible after looting Apocrypha and enduring Master Neloth's insults, but Solstheim has a way of humbling even the most over-prepared Dragonborn. There is a challenge hidden in the ice that doesn't appear in your quest log. No courier brings you a letter, no innkeeper whispers a rumour. To find it, you must simply explore the frozen coastline, guided only by the curiosity that kills cats and high-level adventurers alike. We are hunting a ghost, but not just any ghost. We are hunting a king. Your journey begins at the Glacial Cave, an unassuming crack in the northern icefields. Inside, amidst the usual clutter of snow and rocks, you find a gruesome sight. A massive throne room occupied by Reeklings. These little blue goblins have turned the cave into a makeshift shrine. But they aren't worshipping a Daedric prince. They are worshipping a skull. And not a human skull. This thing is the size of a boulder, belonging to a frost giant of immense proportions. This is the skull of Karstaag. For the veterans among you, that name sends a shiver down the spine that has nothing to do with the temperature. This is our core in-game fact for the night. Karstaag was a major character in the Blood Moon expansion for the Elder Scrolls III Morrowind. Back then, he was the ruler of the Reeklings, a neutral party living in his massive ice castle. But during the events of the Great Hunt, the Nerevarine, the hero of that game, was forced to kill him, or Hircine did, depending on how you interpret the chaotic lore of that era. His death left a power vacuum that the Reeklings are still trying to fill 200 years later. When you pick up the skull, the game doesn't give you a quest marker. It just sits in your inventory, heavy and ominous. You have to deduce where it goes. The answer lies nearby at the Castle Karstaag ruins. What was once a majestic fortress of ice is now a crumbling courtyard, infested with more Reeklings. You fight your way through the little spear throwers, clearing the courtyard until you stand before a massive empty throne of ice. It's a sombre moment. The wind whistles through the shattered walls. The snow piles up against the seat of power. You approach the throne. A prompt appears. Activate throne. You place the skull. The reaction is instantaneous and violent. The screen shakes. A shockwave of frost explodes outward, knocking back anything not nailed down. And then he appears, the ghost of Karstaag. He is massive, towering over you, a spectral blue giant wreathed in a personal blizzard. And let's be very clear, he is not happy to see you. This boss fight is widely considered the single most difficult encounter in Skyrim. Yes, harder than Miraak, harder than Harkon, harder than Alduin. Karstaag is level 90. He has 4,000 health. He has a 100% resistance to frost, poison and paralysis. He regenerates health rapidly, and he hits like a freight train loaded with anvils. The moment the fight starts, you are likely ragdolled. Karstaag has a stomp attack that sends the Dragonborn flying across the arena. If you're not wearing heavy armour or blocking with a shield, you might die in 2 hits. The blizzard he summons drains your stamina and slows your movement, turning the fight into a desperate scramble for survival. You can't kite him easily because the arena is enclosed. You can't freeze him because he's immune. You have to brawl. This is where your Stalhrim armour from earlier proves its worth. That 25% boost to frost enchantments. You're going to need it to outdamage his regeneration. If you have fire spells, use them, but be warned, he is relentless. He summons ice wraiths to harass you while he closes the distance. The audio is a cacophony of roaring wind, the crunch of ice, and the terrifying thud of his footsteps. It is a visceral, panic-inducing fight that forces you to open your inventory and chug every potion you have ever hoarded. Those 50 potions of minor healing you've been saving since Riverwood, they're gone in 10 seconds. There is a fascinating obscure lore tidbit regarding the layout of this ruin. If you played Morrowind, you might recognise the floor plan. The developers of Dragonborn faithfully recreated the footprint of the original Castle Karstaag. The throne is in the exact spot it used to be. The back door leads to the same cavern system. It's a ghost of a location hosting a ghost of an NPC. But here's the kicker. In the original game, Karstaag was actually a fairly chill guy, pun intended. He wasn't inherently hostile until the plot demanded it. The fact that his ghost is so enraged suggests that he has been stewing in the afterlife, angry at the indignity of his death and the ruin of his home. You aren't fighting a monster, you're fighting a grudge that has lasted 2 centuries. The community debate surrounding Karstaag usually pits him against the Ebony Warrior, who is the true, final boss of Skyrim. The Ebony Warrior has perks, shouts, and enchanted gear, making him a mirror of the player. He can reflect damage and paralyze you. It's a technical fight. Karstaag, however, is a stat check. He is a raw force of nature. Many players argue that Karstaag is harder simply because you can fight him earlier. You have to be level 80 to meet the Ebony Warrior, meaning you're already a god. You can stumble upon Karstaag at level 20 if you're adventurous and suicidal enough. The result is usually a one-shot kill that leaves players staring at the loading screen, wondering what just happened. There is also the cheese strategy debate. Because Karstaag is so tough, players have found ways to exploit the AI. You can climb up the rock formations in the corner of the courtyard where he can't reach you and pepper him with arrows for 20 minutes. Is it honourable? No. Is it consistent with the Dragonborn legend? Probably not. But when you're facing a frost giant who can punch you into the stratosphere, honour tends to take a back seat to survival. When you finally whittle his massive health bar down to 0, the blizzard fades. The giant roars one last time and dissolves into a pile of ectoplasm and snow. The silence returns to the courtyard. You are left standing there, likely with 0 stamina and a sliver of health, heart pounding. You loot the pile. You find some gold, some soul gems, the usual high-level loot, but the real reward is a power. You gain the ability to summon Karstaag. This allows you to call the ghost of the giant to fight for you. He spawns in, wrecks absolutely everything in the vicinity, and lasts for 120 seconds. It is without a doubt the strongest summon in the game, but there is a catch. A cruel, brilliant catch. You can only use this power 3 times, ever. Not 3 times per day, 3 times total. Once you use the 3rd charge, the spell vanishes from your menu forever. This mechanic induces a psychological paralysis known as too good to use syndrome. Players will unlock this power and then never use it. They save it for a harder fight. They save it for the Ebony Warrior, they save it for a legendary dragon, but then they beat those enemies without it, so they keep saving it. Eventually they finish the game, retire the character, and Karstaag is still sitting in their magic menu unused. It's a masterstroke of game design, giving you a nuclear weapon that is so precious you're afraid to push the button. Occasionally, you'll hear horror stories of players who accidentally shouted or pressed the wrong button and summoned Karstaag to fight a mudcrab. Watching a level 90 frost giant obliterate a single mudcrab is hilarious, but the realization that you just wasted 33% of your ultimate power is tragic. It's a mistake you only make once. Standing in the ruins of the castle, watching the snow fall on the empty throne, you feel a sense of closure. You have laid the king to rest. You have conquered the hardest challenge the island has to offer in terms of raw combat. The physical world has nothing left that can threaten you. You are the master of the skies, the master of the forge, and the master of the arena. But Solstheim is not just about physical strength. It is a land of secrets, puzzles, and locked doors. And there is one door, deep underground, that requires a weapon you don't have yet. A weapon that is as much a key as it is a blade. To find it, we must leave the open air of the surface and delve into the dark, damp history of the East Empire Company. We're going to a mine that has been closed for a reason. So, check your potions. You're going to need to restock after that fight, and head back toward Raven Rock. We're going into the Bloodskal Barrow. It's time to find a sword that shoots lasers. Yes, you heard me correctly. Laser sword. The chill of Karstaag's ghost still lingers in your marrow as you descend from the northern peaks, but the path of the Dragonborn leads back towards civilization, or what passes for it in Raven Rock. You might have noticed that the town's economy is struggling, and the culprit is the sealed-off ebony mine. This brings us to a task that is as much about historical detective work as it is about dungeoneering. You meet Cretius Corellius, an elderly miner who is obsessed with proving his great-grandfather didn't just die in a common cave-in. He gives you a key and a letter, sending you into the depths of Raven Rock Mine to uncover the truth of the Bloodskal lineage. The descent is long and dark, smelling of damp earth and the sharp metallic tang of ebony ore. You fight through spiders and the persistent rattling presence of Draugr that have reclaimed the lower shafts. Eventually, the mine gives way to ancient Nordic masonry, the Bloodskal Barrow. It is here, in a massive flooded chamber, that you find the remains of Grecian Corellius and the object of his obsession, the Bloodskal blade. This isn't just a silver greatsword, it is a masterpiece of tonal architecture and martial enchantment. When you unsheathe the Bloodskal blade, you'll notice it doesn't just sit there, it hums. And this brings us to our core in-game fact. The Bloodskal blade is a unique two-handed sword that releases a blast of red energy when you perform a power attack. If you swing horizontally, it sends a horizontal arc of energy. Swing vertically, and it fires a vertical bolt. This isn't just for show. To exit the chamber, you must solve a rhythm puzzle, where you paint the energy arcs into specific glowing red cracks in the massive stone door. It's a rare moment where Skyrim uses combat mechanics as a literal key to progression. The obscure lore tidbit here lies in the blade's origin. While it looks Nordic, the energy it emits is highly reminiscent of the tonal architecture used by the Dwemer. Some lore scholars believe the Bloodskal clan didn't just forge a sword, they captured a specific frequency of reality and bound it to the steel. The red energy isn't fire or magic in the traditional sense. It's a localized distortion of space-time. This explains why the energy blast doesn't consume your magicka, but rather relies on the physical momentum of your swing. It's a battery-free laser sword from the Merethic era. Naturally, a weapon this unique is the subject of endless community debate. The central argument? Is it actually viable in the late game? On one hand, the energy blast looks incredible and allows a melee fighter to hit flying dragons or distant archers. It's the ultimate cool factor weapon. On the other hand, the energy blast damage is static. It doesn't scale with your two-handed skill or your enchantments. By the time you're level 50, the 30 points of energy damage feel like a light tickle to a Deathlord. Fans often argue that while it's the coolest key in the game, it ends up as a wall decoration in Severin Manor far too soon. However, if you're a fan of Spellzord builds without actually wanting to cast spells, this blade is your best friend. It bridges the gap between the physical and the mystical. Navigating the rest of the barrow requires you to use the blade to trigger various switches from a distance, making the dungeon feel like a Zelda-esque puzzle gauntlet. You eventually emerge onto the southern coast, far from where you entered, blinking in the grey light of Solstheim with a legendary relic in your hands and the truth for old Critius. There is a satisfying sense of closure in returning the journal to the old man, watching him realise his family history was one of heroism, not tragedy. But the Bloodskal blade is more than just a family heirloom. It's a reminder that Solstheim is a land of buried legacies. And speaking of legacies, while you've been digging through the past of the Nords, a very different kind of conflict has been brewing in the centre of the island. It's a conflict involving mead, honour, and a group of small, blue, spear-throwing creatures who think they've found their new home. You've mastered the laser sword, but now you have to master a much more difficult weapon, diplomacy, or, failing that, a lot of arrows. It's time to head to Thirsk Mead Hall, where a group of displaced Nords and a tribe of ambitious Reeklings are waiting for you to decide who gets to keep the kegs. Emerging from the depths of Bloodskal Barrow with the glowing red blade strapped to your back, you find yourself back in the biting winds of Solstheim's wilderness. The island is a graveyard of lost legacies, the dragon cult, the Dwemer, the Dunmer refugees, but nowhere is the decay of tradition more pathetic and perhaps more hilarious than at Thirsk Mead Hall. Located on the eastern icy slopes near the Skaal village, this legendary structure was once the seat of the mighty Thirsk chieftains, a place of song, story, and intoxicating beverages. Now, it is the site of the most ridiculous turf war in Elder Scrolls history. As you approach the hall, you don't hear the roar of Nords or the clinking of tankards. You hear the chatter of Reeklings. These small, blue, goblin-like creatures have evicted the Nords and claimed the hall for themselves. Outside, huddled around a sad campfire in the snow, are the displaced warriors of Thirsk, led by Bujold the Unworthy. The name really says it all. Bujold is desperate to retake the hall, but her army consists of a few shivering Nords who seem more interested in complaining about the cold than fighting for their honour. This sets up one of the few binary choices in the DLC. Do you help the Nords reclaim their heritage, or do you side with the little blue usurpers? If you approach the hall itself, a Reekling warrior will initiate dialogue. Yes, they can speak, sort of, in a broken, guttural tongue. He invites you inside to meet the chief. The interior of Thirsk is a mess. It's decorated with bones, scraps of leather, and disturbingly a lot of mounted horse heads. The chief Reekling, a particularly large specimen, asks you to help them secure their hold. His requests are bizarre. First, he wants you to find Skaithcraw, a local plant, to make dance. Then, he wants you to kill a great beast, a harmless netch. Finally, he asks you to help them ambush the Nords. Siding with the Reeklings is, frankly, the more entertaining option. It embraces the absurdity of the situation. You lead a squad of spear-throwing goblins against a group of fully armoured Nords. The battle is chaotic. The Reeklings swarm their enemies, their high-pitched battle cries echoing off the Mead Hall walls. When the dust settles and Bujold lies dead in the snow, the chief names you the new chief of Thirsk. This brings us to the core in-game fact. Siding with the Reeklings unlocks them as followers, and they are fantastic. You can recruit a Reekling warrior, scout, or hunter. They take up the pet slot rather than the follower slot, meaning you can have a standard follower, like Teldrin's Ciro or Serana, plus a Reekling. These little guys are surprisingly durable and can carry a decent amount of loot, but their true power lies in their randomness. Occasionally during combat, additional Reeklings will just spawn out of nowhere to help you, overwhelming enemies with sheer numbers. It's like having a dedicated fan club of violent smurfs. On the flip side, if you choose to help Bujold and the Nords, the quest retaking Thirsk plays out more traditionally. You storm the hall, slaughter the Reeklings, and reinstate the Nords. But the story doesn't end there. To truly restore the clan's honour, Bujold insists on seeking the blessing of Frostmoon, the ancient founder of Thirsk, at his barrow. You accompany her there, only to witness a spirit-crushing revelation. Frostmoon's ghost appears and rejects her. He calls her weak, stating that her leadership is the reason they lost the hall in the first place. Here is where the obscure lore tidbit comes in. Thirsk Mead Hall has a rich history, dating back to the Elder Scrolls III, Blood Moon. In that expansion, the player could become the chieftain of Thirsk by killing the Udifrukta, a horrific troll beast. Frostmoon was the founder, a Nord of immense power who ruled the hall in the early Third Era. His rejection of Bujold is significant because it highlights a recurring theme in Skyrim, the decay of Nordic culture. The Nords of the Fourth Era are often portrayed as shadows of their ancestors, clinging to symbols they no longer understand or deserve. Bujold isn't just unworthy because she lost a fight. She is unworthy because she lacks the spirit of the old heroes. She tries to cover up the ghost's rejection, asking you to lie to her clan so she can remain leader. This presents a moral dilemma that the community loves to debate. Do you lie for Bujold to maintain stability, or do you tell the truth and potentially exile her? If you tell the truth, Bujold attacks you, and you are forced to kill her. Her husband, Kuvar, then takes over, mourning her death, but accepting the judgment of the ancestor. It's a tragic, gritty end to a quest that started with goblins throwing spears. The fan theory/community debate here often revolves around which reward is better. The Nords offer the ability to buy unique heavy armour and weapons, and some become potential marriage candidates, specifically Halban Ironfur and Highland. They also train skills like heavy armour, one-handed and smithing to master level. However, many players argue that the Reekling followers are superior simply because of their utility and entertainment value. A Reekling companion is unique, a Nord trainer is replaceable. Plus, the sheer novelty of walking into a serious boss fight with a tiny goblin throwing iron spears is hard to beat. There is also a hidden interaction if you're a werewolf. In the Blood Moon expansion, the player could lead the Reeklings as a werewolf. In Dragonborn, while you can't explicitly lead them because you are a werewolf, the Reeklings are notably less hostile to lycanthropes than standard NPCs. They seem to respect the beastblood, perhaps remembering the time Hircine's influence was strong in the area. Regardless of who you choose, the Aftermath transforms Thirsk. If the Reeklings win, the hall becomes a chaotic nest. They pile up junk in the corners, sleep on the tables, and generally treat the place like a frat house. If the Nords win, it becomes a functioning mead hall again. They repair the furniture, light the fires, and start brewing mead. It feels warm, welcoming, and very Skyrim. But is it better? That's for you to decide. Do you want a cozy base of operations with merchants and trainers, or do you want a chaotic goblin army? One thing is certain, the mead at Thirsk is potent. If you side with the Nords, you can complete a side quest for Elmas to fetch juniper berries from Skyrim. In return, he brews Ashfire Mead, which grants a stamina boost but blurs your vision. It's a nice little touch that connects the two provinces. Ultimately, the fate of Thirsk is a microcosm of Solstheim itself. It's a struggle between the old ways and the new, between the civilized Nords and the primal chaotic forces of the island. By choosing a side, you aren't just picking a vendor, you're shaping the cultural landscape of the region. You're deciding whether this corner of the world belongs to men or monsters. As you leave the mead hall, either stepping over the bodies of Reeklings or high-fiving them on your way out, you look south. The snow begins to thin, replaced by the jagged geothermal crust of the southern wastes. There is a Dwemer ruin down there, marked by strange, glowing resonance gems. It's a place of tests and trials, a machine designed to filter the weak from the strong. You have the Bloodskal blade. You have the Black Books. You have the fate of Thirsk settled. Now it's time to test your combat prowess in a controlled environment. We are heading to Kagrumez. It's time to see if you can survive the arena of the Deep Elves and claim a bow that defies probability. Leaving the chaotic, mead-soaked politics of Thirsk Mead Hall behind, you descend from the snowy peaks back into the grey, sulphurous embrace of the ash wastes. The shift in atmosphere is palpable. The organic, messy struggles of Nords and Reeklings give way to the cold, mathematical precision of the Dwemer. You're heading to a location that isn't a city, a tomb, or a temple. It is a machine, a test. We're talking about Kagrumez, a ruin marked on your map not by a standard dungeon icon, but by the ominous silhouette of a Dwemer tower jutting out of the earth like a buried piston. Kagrumez is unique among the Dwemer ruins of Solstheim. Most are sprawling underground cities filled with farmer and chorus. Kagrumez is compact, claustrophobic, and designed with a single purpose: to test the combat efficiency of whoever enters. It is an arena, built by a race that vanished thousands of years ago, yet their automated judges are still ticking, still waiting to see if you're worthy of their treasures. When you enter the main chamber, you are greeted not by enemies but by a puzzle. In the centre of the room stands a console with a series of sockets. Nearby, the corpse of a bandit who clearly failed the IQ test holds two strange, glowing blue crystals. These are Kagrumez resonance gems. To proceed, you must place these gems in specific patterns on the pedestal to unlock the doors. Here is the catch, and it's a cruel one. There are 3 trials requiring a total of 4 gems to complete. The bandit only has 2. This means to finish this dungeon you have to leave, scour the entire island of Solstheim to find the remaining gems and then return. It is a fetch quest disguised as a gladiator match. The locations of these extra gems are a test of your exploration skills. One can be purchased from Riva Savani, the dark elf tending the Silt Strider near Tel Mithrin. Yes, the guy with the giant flea sells ancient tonal artifacts for a few hundred gold. Another is found in the submerged ruin of Nchardak, which you visit during the main quest with Neloth. A third is located in Falbtarts, deep in the mountains. You likely have these rattling around in your inventory, labelled as misc items, wondering what they do. Now you know. They are keys to a kill box. Once you have the gems and slot them into the pedestal, the room locks down. The walls shift. The floor creates hazards, spinning blades, jets of fire and shock traps. And then the enemies spawn. The trials of Kagrumez are wave-based survival modes. You face dwarven spiders, spheres, and the terrifying dwarven ballistae, automated siege engines that fire spear-sized bolts capable of ignoring 50% of your armor rating. In the tight confines of the arena, dodging is difficult. You are forced to use the environment, perhaps luring enemies into the fire traps or knocking them into the spinning blades. It is a frantic industrial brawl where the sound of clanging metal and hissing steam drowns out your own shouts. But the rewards for surviving these trials are unlike anything else in the game. After the first 2 trials, you don't just get loot, you get friends. You unlock a room containing a steadfast dwarven spider, and later, a steadfast dwarven sphere. These are not enemies, they are followers. Specifically, they are pets. This brings us to a significant community debate. Are mechanical pets viable? On one hand, the steadfast dwarven sphere is a tank. It rolls into battle, slashes with arm blades, and shoots crossbow bolts. It doesn't talk, doesn't complain about carrying your dragon bones, and doesn't get stuck in doorways quite as often as a dog. It regenerates health rapidly when out of combat. For a solitary character who finds animal companions too fragile and human companions too chatty, a robot is the perfect solution. On the other hand, the constant clank whir hiss sound of a Dwemer machine following you around can drive some players insane. It ruins the stealth aesthetic. Trying to sneak through a bandit camp while your personal sphere sounds like a washing machine, falling down a flight of stairs is not immersive. Plus, they take up the pet slot, meaning you can't have a reekling or an armoured troll if you choose the robot. It's a trade-off between utility and noise pollution, but the ultimate prize lies at the end of the 3rd and final trial. The room opens, the steam clears, and you find a weapon resting on a pedestal. This is the Dwarven Black Bow of Fate. Visually, this bow is stunning. It isn't the standard brassy gold of Dwemer gear. It is a deep matte black, etched with glowing orange constellations. It looks modern, almost sci-fi, like something from a different era entirely. And its enchantment matches its look. Here is the core in-game fact. The Dwarven Black Bow of Fate has a unique enchantment that grants a 50% chance to absorb 25 points of health, a 50% chance to absorb 25 points of stamina, and a 50% chance to absorb 25 points of magicka. Notice the wording. It's not one of these. Each effect rolls independently. This means in a single shot you could trigger all 3, absorbing health, stamina, and magicka simultaneously, or you could trigger none. It is a gamble with every pull of the string. This probabilistic nature makes the bow a favourite among gambler builds and statisticians. When it hits hard. Restoring your resources while draining the enemies is a massive swing in momentum. For a combat archer who uses Eagle Eye, zooming in, which drains stamina, and perhaps some illusion magic, draining magicka, this bow is a self-sustaining battery. It keeps you topped off in the heat of battle without needing to chug potions. There is an obscure lore tidbit hidden in the bow's texture files. If you look closely at the glowing orange etchings on the limbs of the bow, they aren't just random squiggles. They are depictions of the constellations for the mage, the warrior, and the thief. This visual storytelling perfectly aligns with the enchantment. Magicka, mage, health/stamina, warrior, and agility/stamina, thief. It suggests that the Dwemer tonal architect who designed this weapon was trying to create a tool that unified the 3 archetypes of power into a single device. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a thesis statement on universal dominance. The Kagrumez trials also highlight the terrifying ingenuity of the Dwemer. Unlike the Nords, who bury their dead with honour, or the Dunmer, who worship their ancestors, the Dwemer built machines to test the living. They didn't care about lineage, they cared about results. By completing the trials, you aren't proving you are worthy in a spiritual sense. You are proving you are efficient. You are a variable that solved their equation. The experience of the dungeon is also a masterclass in pacing. You do a trial, get a reward. Do a trial, get a reward. It feeds the loot loop perfectly. But the frustration of needing those gems can lead to some frantic backtracking. Many players discover Kagrumez early, do the first trial, and then spend the next 40 hours of gameplay keeping an eye out for blue crystals, turning the entire DLC into a scavenger hunt. When you finally emerge from Kagrumez, stepping back into the ash with your black bow and perhaps a robotic sphere rolling behind you, you feel different. You're no longer just a warrior of flesh and blood. You're a commander of machines. You wield a weapon that defies the consistency of standard enchanting. You have beaten the Dwemer at their own game. But Solstheim is a land of layers. You've conquered the ice of the surface, the ink of the books, and the gears of the underground. Now it's time to look toward the coast. There is a legend of a pirate king, a man who amassed so much treasure that he had to bury it across the entire island. He didn't use machines to guard his loot. He used curses. He used the greed of others. We are talking about Deathbrand. This isn't just a quest for gold. It's a quest for the single best set of light armor in the game. To find it, you need a map. And to find the map, you need to find a book. Specifically, Deathbrand. You might have found a copy on a reaver, or perhaps in a chest. Reading it triggers the hunt, so check your inventory. Do you have the ancient Nordic pickaxe we talked about earlier? Good. Do you have the water-walking boots from Azadal? Even better. We are going treasure hunting. The legendary armour of Haknir Deathbrand is waiting, but unlike the orderly trials of Kagrumez, this hunt will take us to the wildest, most remote corners of the map. Get ready to dig. Leaving the mathematical precision of Kagrumez behind, we step back into the chaotic, wind-whipped reality of Solstheim's coast. The Dwemer tested your mind and your reflexes, but the sea tests your greed. There is a legend whispered in the darker corners of the retching Netch, a tale of a pirate king who carved a bloody swathe across the northern seas long before the Empire even thought to put a fort here. His name was Haknir Deathbrand, and unlike most legends that fade into myth, Haknir left something tangible behind. He left a map. You likely found the book titled Deathbrand on a reaver corpse or tucked away in a dusty chest. Reading it doesn't just give you a history lesson, it triggers the quest Deathbrand, marking your map with the location of ancient treasure chests scattered across the island. But here is the catch, and it's a brilliant callback to our earlier adventures. These chests aren't made of wood or iron. They are encased in Stalhrim. Remember that ancient Nordic pickaxe you spent so much time acquiring in Section 4? You need it now. Without it, you're just a tourist staring at a block of magical ice. The hunt begins at Haknir's Shoal, a small camp on the northern coast. You dig through the Stalhrim, crack open the chest and claim the Deathbrand helm, but more importantly you find a key. This key unlocks the remaining 3 chests, turning the quest into a grand tour of Solstheim's most remote and scenic locations. This is where your investment in Section 5 pays off. If you have Azadal's boots of water walking, traversing the jagged coastline to reach the chest near Tel Mithrin, or the one hidden near the waterfalls becomes trivial. You sprint across the waves, bypassing the slaughterfish, driven by the promise of the ultimate loot. Collecting the full set reveals a core in-game fact that changes the meta for light armor users. The Deathbrand armor set, when worn together, offers a higher armor rating than Dragonscale armor, if you lack the smithing perks to improve Dragonscale to the cap, and provides massive enchantments. The helm grants water breathing, useless for combat but great for exploration. The armor gives plus 60 stamina for each piece of Deathbrand gear you wear. The gauntlets increase your one-handed damage by 10% for each piece worn. The boots increase your carrying capacity by 10 for each piece worn. Do the math. That's plus 100 armor rating, plus 40% one-handed damage, plus 40 carry weight, plus 15 stamina. Wait, the stamina buff is actually plus 15 per piece, totaling plus 60. It is a stat stick of immense proportions. It essentially turns a light armor character into a tank with the damage output of a berserker. But the armor is just the appetizer. The main course is hidden in Gildenhull Barrow. Once you have all 4 pieces, the quest directs you to this unsuspecting ruin on the eastern coast. You use the key to open the master-locked doors, and what you find inside is enough to make any Dragonborn stop and stare. Gold. Piles of it. Not just gold in chests. Gold on the floor, gold on the tables, gold everywhere. Gildenhull Barrow contains roughly 5,000 to 6,000 gold pieces in loose coins alone. It is a visual representation of a pirate's hoard that Skyrim rarely delivers. You spend a solid 5 minutes just mashing the take button, watching your coin count skyrocket. But you aren't here for the pocket change. You penetrate deeper into the barrow until you reach the burial chamber of Haknir Deathbrand himself. The skeleton of the Pirate King lies on a table, clutching 2 scimitars. When you try to take them, his ghost appears. And unlike the silent, dutiful Draugr, Haknir is angry. He's a spectral force of rage, shouting about his treasure and his curse. The boss fight is a gauntlet of attrition. Haknir doesn't just fight you alone. He vanishes periodically and summons his crew, the ghosts of the men he killed to keep his secret. You fight wave after wave of spectral pirates, their translucent cutlasses glowing in the dark barrow. Haknir eventually returns, wielding his signature weapons, Bloodscythe and Soul Render. These 2 scimitars are the obscure lore tidbit of the section. According to the journals found on his crew members, Geralda specifically, Haknir didn't die in battle. He lived a long, violent life, accumulating a treasure so vast that he knew his crew would kill him for it eventually. To prevent this, he made a pact with Mehrunes Dagon, implied by the curse and the nature of his weapons. He killed his own crew one by one, sealing them in the barrow to guard him in death. The tragedy is that Geralda, his quartermaster, thought she was the exception. She thought he trusted her. He didn't. He killed her last, binding her soul to the treasure just like the rest. When you finally defeat Haknir's ghost, shattering his soul and sending him back to oblivion, you claim the blades. Bloodscythe and Soul Render are unique because they are designed to be dual-wielded. When used together, they absorb 15 points of health and magicka, and have a chance to lower the enemy's armor rating and magical defenses. This set sparks a massive community debate. Is Deathbrand the endgame build? For years, the Stealth Archer was the undisputed king of Skyrim, but the Deathbrand set challenges that dominance. The sheer damage output of dual-wielding these scimitars while wearing the full armor set is mathematical absurdity. You attack faster than a 2-handed warrior, hit harder than a sword and board tank, and move faster than a heavy armor user. Purists argue that it's too easy. They claim the armor looks garish. It's bright blue Stalhrim. It glows. It doesn't exactly scream subtle assassin. Many players refuse to wear it simply because of the aesthetic, preferring the darker, cooler look of the Nightingale armor or the ruggedness of Dragonscale. This is the classic fashion scrolls versus stat scrolls argument. Do you want to look like a ninja, or do you want to be a walking blending machine that looks like an ice sculpture? There is also a hidden interaction with the Twin Secrets perk in enchanting. Since Deathbrand armor is already enchanted, you can't add more effects to it. This frustrates min-maxers who want to put specific enchantments, like Fortify Archery or Muffle, on their gear. For those players, crafting their own Stalhrim set, as we discussed in Section 4, is superior because they can customize it. Deathbrand is a pre-packaged God mode, whereas custom Stalhrim is bespoke God mode. But let's be honest, walking into a bandit camp with 2 glowing scimitars that suck the life out of your enemies while wearing armor that makes you nigh invulnerable is a power trip that is hard to resist. The weapons have a unique visual effect when they strike, a red and blue flash that corresponds to the health and magicka absorption. It feels kinetic, it feels piratical. The quest Deathbrand is also a masterclass in environmental storytelling without cutscenes. You piece together the story of Haknir through the map, the locations of the chests and the final confrontation. You realise that Haknir wasn't just a pirate, he was a man terrified of being forgotten, terrified of losing his power. By finding his armour and wielding his swords, you are fulfilling his greatest fear. You are usurping his legend. You are the new Deathbrand. As you exit Gildenhull Barrow, blinking in the sunlight, weighed down by thousands of gold pieces and carrying the finest swords in the DLC, you feel a sense of completion. You have mastered the physical challenges of Solstheim. You have the best armor, you have the best weapons, you have the money. But physical power is only one side of the coin. Solstheim is a land of deep spiritual wounds. The Nords here aren't just fighting the cold, they are fighting the loss of their identity. There is a village to the north that has been isolated for centuries, holding on to secrets that predate the Empire, predate the Tribunal, and perhaps predate the dragons themselves. We need to go back to the Skaal village, not to trade or to craft, but to listen, to understand the true cost of the conflict between Miraak and Hermaeus Mora, to learn the secrets of the Allmaker, and perhaps to witness the final, tragic chapter of a family that has been torn apart by duty. Put away your scimitars. It's time to show some respect. We are entering sacred ground. Leaving the gold-strewn floors of Gildenhall Barrow and the ghostly rage of Hacknir Deathbrand behind, you find yourself trudging back up the slope toward the northern coast. Your inventory is heavy with loot, your armour is enchanted with the souls of ancient pirates, and you are, by all accounts, the wealthiest being on Solstheim. But as you crest the ridge and see the smoke rising from the chimneys of the Skaal village, you are reminded that there are things on this island that gold cannot buy. We are stepping into the domain of the Skaal, a tribe that has survived for millennia not by hoarding treasure, but by hoarding secrets. The Skaal village is a stark contrast to the rest of Skyrim. There are no jarls here, no guards asking about sweet rolls, and no intricate guild politics. It is a community living on the razor's edge of survival, governed by a deep, or animistic faith in the Allmaker. For the player who has spent hundreds of hours chasing Daedric artifacts and shouting people off cliffs, the Skaal offer a humbling perspective. They view your power not as a gift, but as a burden. To them, the voice is a sacred tool, not a weapon of war. But the peace of the village is an illusion. If you are following the main questline, you know that the Skaal are the key to defeating Miraak. Specifically their shaman, Storn Cragstrider, holds the knowledge you need. This leads to one of the most controversial and tragic moments in the entire DLC, the quest, the Gardener of Men. Hermaeus Mora, the Prince of Fate who has been nagging you since Section 1, offers you the final word of the Bend Will Shout, the word dragon. But his price is steep. He demands the secrets of the Skaal, ancient knowledge that the tribe has guarded from him for generations. He doesn't want to learn it, he wants to consume it. He wants to add it to his library simply so he has it, and the Skaal don't. It is petty, cosmic jealousy. Storn knows this. When you bring him the Black Book, he agrees to the trade. He steps into the village square surrounded by his people, his daughter Freya watching with terrified eyes, and opens the book. What follows is a scene that is hard to watch. Tentacles erupt from the book, piercing Storn's chest and skull. The old man is lifted into the air, his life force and his knowledge drained in a violent, writhing display of body horror. When his corpse hits the snow, Hermaeus Mora speaks, satisfied. You get your shout. The village gets a funeral. This moment is the anchor for an in-game fact that defines the Skaal. They are the antithesis of the Dragonborn. You gain power by taking dragon souls. They gain peace by giving their souls back to the Allmaker. Their philosophy is one of recycling spirit, whereas yours is one of accumulation. Storn's death is the ultimate expression of this. He gives everything so you can take the final step. However, the Skaal aren't just victims, they're also historians. Once the dust settles, and Freya stops wanting to kill you for getting her father killed, you can engage with Tharstan, the village historian. He is an outsider, an elderly scholar who is obsessed with the local ruins. He invites you to explore Varloc's tomb in the quest Lost Legacy. This dungeon is a fascinating deviation from the norm. It contains no claw doors. Instead, you solve puzzles involving bridges and handles that require you to drag Draugr bodies onto pressure plates, or use your own weight. At the end, you face Varloc the Jailer. Varloc is the only named dragon priest in the game who does not have a mask. Why? Because according to the lore tablets found in the dungeon, Varloc was the dragon priest who originally defeated Miraak in the Merethic era. He was the jailer tasked with keeping the traitor contained. He didn't need a mask to hide his face or intimidate the masses. His authority was absolute. He was so loyal to the dragons that he essentially became the warden of Solstheim. Defeating him feels like putting down a retired heavyweight champion who has been waiting thousands of years for a worthy opponent. The lack of a mask for Varlock has sparked a massive fan theory debate. Some players believe that Varlock did have a mask, specifically the mask Konarek found in the base game of Skyrim. Konarek means warlord. The theory goes that Varlock was the supreme leader of the dragon priests, the warlord, and his mask was taken to the Labyrinthian on the mainland for safekeeping or as a symbol of the cult's unity. By defeating Varlock, you're essentially fighting the ghost of the cult's greatest loyalist, the man who stopped the First Dragonborn from conquering the world the first time around. The Skaal also offer unique interactions if you are a werewolf. The villagers will comment on the beast blood in your veins with a mix of pity and disgust. They have a long bloody history with werewolves, referenced in the Blood Moon expansion of Morrowind, culminating in the Blood Moon prophecy. While they won't attack you on sight, their dialogue adds a layer of tension. You're a guest, but you're also a monster. There is another quieter secret in the village. If you help Nicholas, a young Skaal man, you get involved in a domestic dispute about whether he should leave the village to see the world. His mother, Edla, wants him to stay and preserve their ways. It's a small, unlisted interaction, but it highlights the central tragedy of the Skaal. They are dying out. Their isolation, which once protected them, is now suffocating them. By convincing Nicholas to stay or leave, you are directly influencing the future demographics of the tribe. And let's not forget the crafting. The Skaal teach you how to craft Stalhrim, yes, but they also sell unique amulets. You can buy the Werebear necklace from them if you are lucky, though it's rare. Wait, actually, that's from the Frostmoon pack, which we'll get to. The Skaal offer something else, the Skaal coat. It's not armour, it provides barely any protection, but it is, without a doubt, the warmest looking piece of clothing in the game. For role players using survival mods like Frostfall, the Skaal coat is legendary tier gear simply because it looks like you could sleep in a snowbank and be fine. As you leave the village, walking past the fresh grave of Stormcrag Strider, the weight of your journey shifts. You have the power to bend dragons, you have the wealth of pirate kings, you have the knowledge of Hermaeus Mora, but you also have the blood of a good man on your hands. The Skaal have given you everything they had, including their leader, to help you save the world. But while the Skaal worry about the spiritual balance of the island, a more literal physical threat is marching from the south. The ash is stirring. Not because of the wind, but because of an army that has been dead for 200 years but refuses to lay down its weapons. You fought ghosts, you fought dragons, you fought tentacle monsters. Now you have to fight a general who doesn't know the war is over. It's time to head to Fort Frostmoth. We are going to stop the March of the Dead. Leaving the grieving silence of the Skaal village behind, you trudge south once more, descending from the pristine snow into the grey choking reality of the ash wastes. The spiritual sacrifice of Stormcrag Strider hangs heavy in the air, a reminder that on Solstheim, every victory demands a price. But while the Skaal worry about the balance of the Allmaker, the people of Raven Rock are facing a much more immediate physical threat. If you've spent any time near the Bulwark, the massive wall protecting the town, you've likely seen Captain Velith and his Redrun Guard fighting off waves of grotesque humanoid creatures made of volcanic ash and glowing embers. These are the Ash Spawn, and they are not just random monsters, they are soldiers, and they have a general. The quest, March of the Dead, usually begins outside the town, often near the old Atius farm, where you find Captain Velith battling a particularly aggressive group of Spawn. After helping him dispatch the creatures, you find a note on one of the ash piles. It's a declaration of war signed by General Falx Carius. For the veterans of the Elder Scrolls III, Morrowind, specifically the Blood Moon expansion, this name drops like a hammer. General Falx Carius was the Imperial garrison commander at Fort Frostmoth 200 years ago. In that game, he was a quest giver, a staunch defender of the Empire and a man who fought against the werewolf threat during the Blood Moon prophecy. He was a hero. He supposedly died when the Red Mountain erupted, burying the fort in ash and magma during the Red Year. So, how is he sending letters now? To find out, you must travel to the ruins of Fort Frostmoth. Located on the southern coast, it is a shattered husk of its former glory. The walls are crumbled, the courtyards filled with ash drifts so deep they bury the barracks. But as you approach, you realise the fort is not abandoned. It is teeming with ash spawn. And unlike the mindless creatures you find in the wild, these spawn are organised. They hold formation. They patrol the ramparts. They are an army. Entering the fort is a chaotic experience. The interior is a confusing vertical maze of collapsed floors and hidden tunnels. You have to navigate through the mess hall, the armory, and the officers' quarters, all while fighting off ash spawn that explode into dust when killed. But the true horror lies in the journals you find scattered about. They reveal that Ildari Sarothril, the former apprentice of Master Neloth, whom we discussed in Section 7 as being replaced, found the general's body. In a twisted attempt to prove her mastery over heartstones, the magical volcanic rocks that Neloth is obsessed with, she implanted one into the chest of the dead general. This brings us to the lore that makes this encounter so tragic. Falx Carius isn't a zombie in the traditional sense. He isn't a mindless thrall. The Heartstone has reanimated his body and fragments of his personality, but it has warped his perception. He believes he's still fighting the war from 200 years ago. To him, the Dunmer of Raven Rock aren't refugees, they are invaders. He thinks the Red Year is still happening. He is trapped in a loop of eternal duty, compelled by the stone in his chest to defend a fort that no longer exists against an enemy that isn't real. When you finally reach the inner keep, you confront the general himself, and let me tell you, for a corpse, he has aged like fine wine. If fine wine was made of granite and hate, Falx Carius is a behemoth. He is level 50 minimum, often scaling higher. He wears unique armour, though unlootable, and wields arguably the most important weapon in the entire DLC, the champion's Cudgel. The boss fight is brutal. Carius hits like a runaway cart. His Warhammer ignores 50% of your armour rating because of the weapon perk he possesses. If you are a light armour character, a single power attack from him can trigger the kill cam animation instantly. He summons ash spawn to harass you, forcing you to juggle crowd control while dodging his massive swings. The enclosed space of the keep makes kiting difficult. You have to be tactical, or perhaps using the Become Ethereal shout to dodge his heaviest attacks, or using your own summons, hello Karstaag or Dremora Merchant, to distract him. But the prize? Oh, the prize is worth the concussion. When Carius finally falls, crumbling into dust as the Heartstone's magic fades, you loot the champion's Cudgel. It is an Imperial Warhammer with the Imperial Legion symbol on the head, looking heavy and authoritative. But its true value is the enchantment, Chaos Damage. This specific enchantment is the subject of intense fan theory and build crafting debate. The champion's Cudgel has a 50% chance to deal 25 points of fire damage, 25 points of frost damage, and 25 points of shock damage. That sounds random, right? Chaos. But here is the secret. Unlike the Dwarven Black Bow of Fate, where the effects are independent, Chaos Damage is treated as a single enchantment that contains all three keywords. Why does this matter? Because of how Skyrim calculates perks. Remember our discussion in Section 4 about Stalhrim? Stalhrim armour and weapons boost frost enchantments by 25%. Because Chaos Damage contains the frost keyword, the entire enchantment gets boosted, but it gets better. If you have the destruction perks Augmented Flames, Augmented Frost, and Augmented Shock, all three perks apply to the Chaos enchantment. This means if you take the champion's Cudgel to an arcane enchanter and disenchant it, destroying the unique weapon sadly, but gaining the knowledge, you can apply Chaos Damage to a Stalhrim sword. With all the relevant perks and the Stalhrim bonus, you can create a weapon that deals hundreds of points of elemental damage per swing. It is, mathematically, the highest damage potential in the game. It breaks the combat system. A dual-wielding character with 2 Chaos/Absorb Health Stalhrim swords is a walking apocalypse. So, the debate rages. Do you keep the champion's Cudgel as a trophy because it looks cool and is a unique relic of a hero? Or do you smash it on the enchanting table to learn the secret of chaos? Most players smash it. The power is simply too intoxicating. It's a harsh fate for the general's signature weapon, turned into a battery for your own godhood. But such is the way of the Dragonborn. With Carius dead, the march of the dead stops. Captain Veleth rewards you with a hefty sum of gold and the gratitude of House Redoran. You have saved Raven Rock from being overrun by the past. The Ash Spawn will still appear in the wild, but they are no longer an organised army. The fort falls silent again, returning to the grave it was meant to be. The tragedy of Falx Carius is a poignant reminder of Solstheim's nature. It is a place where the past refuses to stay buried. Heartstones, ancient curses. Forgotten gods, they all bubble up to the surface, but you have put this specific ghost to rest. You have ended the general's long watch. As you walk away from the fort, the ash crunching under your boots, you might feel a sense of military accomplishment. You've handled the politics, the magic, the dragons, and now the army. You are the master of civilization on this island. But Solstheim isn't just ruins and forts. There is a wilder side to the island. A primal force that rejects walls and laws entirely. Up in the northern peaks, hidden among the crags where the snow meets the sky, there is a pack. They aren't Nords, they aren't Dunmer, they aren't even fully human. They are hunters, and they have something you might want if you have a certain beastly affliction. It's time to embrace the animal within. We are heading to Frostmoon Crag. If you're a werewolf, you're about to find your kin. If you're not, well, you might just be lunch. Leaving the crumbling walls of Fort Frostmoth and the tragic dusty remains of General Falk's Carrius behind, we turn our gaze north for one final trek. We are done with the politics of Raven Rock. We are done with the madness of Tel Mithrin. We are done with the ancient grudges of the dragon priests. What calls to us now is something far older than empires or magic. It is the call of the wild. If you have been harbouring a certain beastly affliction since your days with the companions in Whiterun, if the moons of Nirn sing to your blood, then there is one last pilgrimage you must make. We are going to Frostmoon Crag. Located high in the icy peaks south of the Skaal village, hidden among jagged rocks that cut the wind like knives, is a small camp. At first glance, it looks like a standard hunter's rest. A fire, some tents, racks of drying meat. But as you approach, the air changes. It smells of wet fur, raw meat, and distinct, musky danger. The inhabitants aren't bandits. They are Nords, yes, but they move with a predatory grace that feels wrong. Their eyes are yellow. They don't greet you with "need something," they greet you with a sniff. This is the Frostmoon pack. They are werewolves. And unlike the companions who hide their nature in the Underforge, or the feral beasts you find in the wild, these lycanthropes live openly. They are proud. They are the apex predators of Solstheim, led by Majni. A rugged Nord with scars that tell stories of hunts you can't even imagine. They offer a sanctuary for those who embrace the beast blood. Here is the in-game fact that makes this location essential for any werewolf player. If you are currently a werewolf, and only if you are, Majni will welcome you as brother or sister. This opens up his inventory as a merchant, and he doesn't sell iron daggers. He sells 4 unique rings, the rings of Bloodlust, Instinct, the Hunt, and the Moon. These rings are game changers for lycanthropy gameplay. Before the Dragonborn DLC, playing as a werewolf in the late game was often considered weak. You couldn't loot, you couldn't heal easily, and your damage fell off compared to enchanted weapons. But the Ring of the Hunt fixes the biggest flaw. It allows you to regenerate health while in beast form. This is huge. Usually a werewolf has to feed on corpses to heal, which is risky in the middle of a boss fight. With this ring, you become a self-sustaining tank, regenerating health passively just like you do in human form. It turns the werewolf from a glass cannon into a viable, durable brawler. Then there is the Ring of Bloodlust. This one is for the adrenaline junkies. It increases your damage dealt by 50%, but you also take 50% more damage. If you combine this with the Savage Feeding perk, which lets you feed on almost anything, and the Totem of the Brotherhood, which summons spectral wolves, you become a whirlwind of death. You kill enemies in 1 or 2 swipes, tearing through bandit camps before they can even draw their weapons. It's high risk, high reward, and incredibly satisfying. The Ring of Instinct slows down time for 20 seconds when you first transform. This solves the awkward vulnerability window where you're stuck in the transformation animation while enemies beat on you. Now, you transform, the world slows to a crawl, and you can line up your first power attack or dodge an incoming fireball with Matrix-like precision. But the most fascinating aspect of Frostmoon Crag isn't what they sell, it's what they are. If you linger in the camp long enough, or if you aggro them, the pack members will transform, but they don't turn into wolves, they turn into werebears. Lycanthropy comes in many strains. In High Rock and Hammerfell there are wereboars, in Elsewhere, Whirlians, in Black Marsh, we're crocodiles. And here, in the frozen north of Solstheim, the dominant strain is the werebear. These creatures are massive, taller, broader, and furrier than werewolves. They stand on two legs like a grizzly that hits the gym 7 days a week. When they attack, they don't just bite, they maul with paws the size of shields. This visual distinction leads to the biggest community debate and disappointment in the entire DLC. Players see the Werebears, they see how cool they look. They see the unique animations, and they immediately ask, "Can I become a werebear?" The answer, crushing the dreams of thousands, is no. You cannot contract werebear lycanthropy in the vanilla game. Even if you let them hit you, even if you wear their rings, you are stuck as a wolf. This design choice has fueled years of modding. Playable Werebears is one of the most popular mods for Skyrim specifically, because Bethesda teased us with it right here at Frostmoon Crag. Fans argue it was a missed opportunity to introduce a tank class of lycanthrope to contrast with the rogue style of the werewolf. The werebear looks slower, but hits harder, perfect for a heavy armor build. Instead, we just get to watch Majni and his brother Akar transform and wreck us if we steal a sweet roll. The dialogue with Majni also reveals a deep connection to the island's history. He mentions that his pack has hunted these hills since the Great Hunt, a reference to the Blood Moon expansion of Morrowind. They view the Skaal not as enemies, but as prey who forgot their place. To Majni, the Skaal are weak because they rejected Hircín's gift. He speaks of the hunt not as a sport but as a religious ecstasy. To run, to kill, to eat. It is all there is, he says. It's a primal philosophy that strips away the complexity of the Dragonborn's life. You aren't a saviour here. You're just another set of teeth. However, there is a catch to their hospitality. If you cure your lycanthropy, perhaps by completing the companion's questline fully, and return to the crag, they will sniff you out instantly. You smell wrong, Majni will growl. They will tell you to leave. If you don't, they will kill you. It's a sharp reminder that their loyalty is to the blood, not the person. You are either pack, or you are meat. There is no middle ground. There is also a subtle tragedy to the pack. There are only 4 of them, Majni, Akar, Raquel, and Hanning. They are a dying breed, much like the snow elves or the dragons. They are holding on to a way of life that is increasingly impossible in a world dominated by the Empire and the Thalmor. By buying their rings, you're essentially funding their survival. You are keeping the old ways alive, carrying a piece of their savage heritage with you back to Skyrim. And let's not forget the Ring of the Moon. This ring increases the duration of your howls by 25%. If you use the Totem of Fear howl, you can send entire armies fleeing in terror for even longer. If you use the Totem of the Brotherhood, your pack stays with you longer. It emphasizes the leader aspect of the werewolf gameplay. You aren't just a monster, you are an alpha. Standing on the edge of Frostmoon Crag, looking out over the white expanse of Solstheim, you feel the weight of the rings in your inventory. You have the power of the hunt. You have the resilience of the bear, spiritually at least. You have connected with the wildest, most untamed aspect of the island. You are the Dragonborn, yes. You are the master of the Thuum. You have conquered Apocrypha, mastered the Black Books, forged Stalhrim, built a home, funded a dig, and defeated a general. But here, in the cold wind, you are simply a predator, and Solstheim is your hunting ground. The journey is complete. You have touched every corner of this ash-stained jewel. You have delved into the deepest barrows and soared through the highest skies. You have walked on water and breathed underwater. You have commanded dragons and summoned demons. You have done it all. The fire in the hearth of Severin Manor has burned down to glowing embers. The ash outside has settled, coating the streets of Ravenrock in a soft grey blanket. The wind that howls through the Mosering Mountains has quieted to a whisper, carrying with it the faint rhythmic breathing of the sleeping world. We have travelled far tonight, you and I, from the ink-black depths of Apocrypha where knowledge bites and screams, to the pristine, blinding white of the Skaal village where silence is a form of prayer. We have walked in the footsteps of Miraak, feeling the seduction of power and the inevitability of fate. We have forged armour from the ice of the dead and wielded swords that drink the light of the stars. We have laughed with mad wizards in mushroom towers and mourned with captains in crumbled forts. Solstheim is a land of scars. It wears the wounds of the Red Mountain, the wounds of the dragon cult, and the wounds of the ocean. But it is also a land of endurance. Like the Netch floating peacefully over the ash, or the Strider waiting by the docks, life here persists. And you, the last Dragonborn, have become part of that persistence. You have left your mark on the stone, on the ice, and on the souls of those you met. Take a moment now to let the tension fade from your shoulders, unclench your jaw. The controller is down, the keyboard is silent, the quests are done, the journal is clear. There are no more markers on the compass, no more urgent letters from couriers, just the quiet satisfaction of a journey completed. Close your eyes. Imagine the aurora borealis shimmering above the throat of the world, its light reflecting off the sea of ghosts. Imagine the warmth of the retching netch, the smell of baking bread and brewing mead. You are safe here. You are home. The adventures will always be there waiting for you, frozen in code, ready to be awakened whenever you wish to return. But for now, the story is over. The book is closed. The candle is snuffed. Sweet dreams.